Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock. We'd like to start the meeting. Do we have one? Yeah.
Yep.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee meeting number 7. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathering during Agriculture Week here in Ontario and would like to provide my thanks to all farmers in our communities. The saying goes, if you have a food on your table, thank farmer. And that's what we're doing today. So we thank them every day and all the time. And I would like to begin by acknowledging that this meeting being held on an unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Ask Kelly to do a roll call, please.
Councillor Brown,
Here.
Councillor Kitts,
Here.
Councillor Lulov,
Easy.
You're on mute.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Here.
and Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. We have a very heavy agenda, so we'll get this on the go. This public meeting is to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendment listed as item 4.1 to 4.4 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who made oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on October 11, 2023, please email or call the committee coordinator or council coordinator. Number 2, do we have any declaration of interest? Seeing none. 3.1, we have a confirmation of Heure minutes 6, Thursday, September 7, 2023. Can carry?
Carried.
That's items carried. Thank you very much. Number 4.1, a zoning bylaw amendment, part of 5434 Piperville Road, and this is on Osgood Ward 20. We're going to hold that item. We have a delegation for that. 4.2 zoning bylaw amendment 5646 and 5650 Manatic Main Street. We're going to hold that item. We have a presentation, and we also have a delegation. 4.3, an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 2545 9th Line Road. We're going to also hold that item because we have presentation and also we have a delegations. And we have a 4.4, a zoning bylaw allowing zoning bylaw 2008-250 with Bill 23, sorry, concerning additional dwelling units. And we have a staff with us, Robert Sandercourt, he's the planner. And we already probably went through the presentation yesterday. So if the committee wish, we can just go to the recommendation. Any question? Report recommendation that Planning and Housing Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment zoning bylaw 2008-250 to permit up to 2 additional units on fully serviced residential lot in accordance with provincial requirement under Bill 23 as shown in document 1. Is that item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. 4.5, we have Conversation Authority Program and Services Agreements. No, there is no presentation, no delegation, and this is straightforward. We have Amy McPherson, the planner, on the file, and she's here. Thank you very much for being here with us this morning. And if the wish of the committee, we can just go to the recommendation. Report recommendation that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committees recommend Council authorize and direct the General Manager, Planning, Real Estate, and Economy Development to enter into written agreements with Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and South Nation Conservation Authority by January 1st, 2024, as required by provincial legislation, so they can continue to use municipal levy funds to deliver programs and services to Ottawa residents. Is that item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Amy. We also have a few items we'd like to carry before we move on to, sorry about that. So we do have a statement to read, but we're gonna hold this item number, second here, it's 5.1. But we have number 6, we have 6.1, status update, Agriculture Referral Committee inquire and motions, and this is just the report recommendation that the Agriculture and Referral Committee received the report for information only. So can we receive that?
Received.
Thank you very much. And that received. And number 8.1, just an information, an Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program 2022 annual report is being filed just for the information. Thank you. And that will go back to our items that we held. And we're going to start with, sorry about that. Okay. So we're going to start with 4.1, the zoning bylaw amendment part 5134 Piperville. And we do have the applicant available. And of course, we have Luke Tieft. Luke's here? Oh, I see it. Thanks, Luke. To answer any question. And we have delegation, Christine Vessenville. So if Christine's available, we can give her 5 minutes. Are you on? So Christine, while we enable the audio for you, and you have a 5 minute as a delegation, so you can present information.
She's just in there now.
Okay, so you have 5 minutes for presentation. I will give you your 5 minutes, and the committee, if they have a question, they can ask you a question, and there is ask a question to staff, we can ask them directly to you. So you can go ahead, please.
Dear committee members, I live approximately 200 meters away from the site of
Christine, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Hear me now? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
I live approximately 250 meters away from the site of the proposed Piperville Municipal Transformer Station, MTS. I'm a clinical psychological associate operating a private practice from this address. I also manage a Facebook group that includes some of these affected local residents, and we have been monitoring environmental issues in the area for the past 2 years. I believe there has been an abusive process by Hydro Ottawa. This summary was sent only to residents within 120 meters of the subject property, but a municipal transformer station emits electromagnetic fields and will have several significant negative impacts on residents at further distances. Number 2, all of the negative feedback that we provided at the 2 Hydro Ottawa community information sessions has been omitted from the report. Number 3, none of the residents, including myself, have received a copy of the environmental assessment or a record of all of the community feedback. Number 4, the Hydro Ottawa rep, Michael Campbell, did not respond to a request for some information I made back on August 17th until October 2nd, a month and a half later, after I had to email him a second time, telling him I needed information for today's meeting. I believe there is this effort to eliminate the voices of the affected local rural residents. Now moving to the effects, the Stantec report writes that it anticipates that this zoning change will not result in any significant impacts on the local residents or the environment. This is absolutely ludicrous for the following reasons. Number 1, financially, a 2018 study found that lots near high voltage power lines sell for 45% less than lots that are not near power lines. And even a lot within 1,000 feet of transmission lines sells for about 18% less. There have been numerous studies that have reached these similar conclusions. So that we want to know who will be compensating us for hundreds of thousands of dollars in property loss. Hydro Ottawa has been misleading the public by stating on their project website that the station is supporting local development in the area, which may bring associated increases in property values. What I've seen, though, in the Stantec consulting report is that it states they do not have the capacity to meet anticipated future demand in this area, thus the MTS is for the benefit of the developers. There will also be physical and mental health effects. There are widespread concerns that the electromagnetic radiation generated by power lines causes cancer. Even though scientific research has yet to strongly confirm the claims, these fears are very damaging to property values, and people believe that this is the case. Studies have not been able either to disprove the concerns. Some studies have found correlations between power lines and cancer, so it is completely incorrect to claim practical concerns, disruptive construction, shaking houses and foundations, constant humming noise and vibration from an MTS. And fifthly, there are environmental concerns. This Piperville MTS will be dangerous for the monarch butterflies that visit our area annually. They have been declared as an endangered species in New Brunswick last year. They are endangered internationally. If they are upgraded to threatened or endangered in Ontario, they will be given habitat protection. There may also continue to be some threatened or endangered bird species in the area, including bobolink and Henslow sparrows. This was documented by a site assessment report in 2015. In conclusion, on behalf of the affected local residents, I'm asking the committee to terminate this amendment, this zoning amendment for 5134 Piperville Road. Hydro Ottawa is misleading the public. They are not putting the safety and well-being of the local residents ahead of the desires of developers. Hydro Ottawa also appears to be putting the City of Ottawa in a position of legal liability for potential damages suffered by residents if they approve this rezoning and allow the MTS to be built. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Before you go anywhere, I'll see if the committee have any question for you. For the benefit of the committee member, and I understand we don't have presentation from staff, but we do, from my understanding, Ottawa Hydro are online with the Stantec, also Barrett Wager and Michael Campbell are available for presentation if the committee wish to see it. But I also want to ask a direct question to our city staff. But this is, from my understanding, we're dealing today with the zoning amendment for the station, part of the condition from the Committee of Adjustment. And if they want to put a power station in that land and the property, they could do so right now without even being here. So we're doing is kind of restricting the zoning bylaw from allowing residential. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of share that with us and the public and the committee members so that we understand what we're looking at today and what we are really approving, if that's possible. So Luke, I'll let you.
So to confirm, the zoning bylaw amendment today is just to restrict residential development from not being built or from not being put on that site, and just allowing for the construction of a hydro transformer station. That is all.
Thank you. The committee member, go ahead.
Thanks for that, Luke. Just to clarify though, if the applicant wished to do so today, could they build this piece of utility infrastructure without going through this process?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you very much. And that's from my understanding. Any other question we also have a Hydro Ottawa people online, like I mentioned. We're good. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, and we appreciate. So we go to the recommendation that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment zoning bylaw 2008-50 for part 5134 Piperville Road as shown in document 1 to permit the construction of an electrical transformer station as detailed in document 2. Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next one is we have a zoning bylaw 4.2, and we do have presentation. Sean Harrigan is here with us. I'll give a moment to Sean to come to the table and start his presentation. And we do have a delegation. So the way we're gonna have presentation. We go through the delegation, and then we have question to staff, and we move to the recommendation. Go ahead, Sean. So Sean, before you start, we're gonna have presentation from you, and I'm understanding the applicant also have a presentation, so we'll go back to back on that one, if they can get it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So this is a presentation for 5646 and 5650 Manotick Main Street, which is a zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. So as you can see on the screen there, the properties are highlighted in the red triangle, which is a little bit difficult to see on this slide here, but it is kind of located somewhat in the bottom right corner there. It is currently zoned mixed residential commercial, and it's about 400 meters south of the village core and about 700 meters north of Manotick's southern boundary, village boundary. Next slide, please. So you can see the properties there that are highlighted in the blue. Uses the satellite imagery from 2022, which just shows the property and surrounding area. As you can see there, it is built up. There's numerous trees there. The property is zoned rural commercial, as are the properties directly north. And then on the other three sides, we have residential, which are zoned village first residential density and village third residential density. Next slide, please. The applicant's proposal is to remove all existing structures, including the convenience store, the car wash, the residential, and all secondary structures on the property and all services, and construct a restaurant with a drive-through and a new 5-bay car wash. This will require to rezone the property to remove the current exception zone. Next slide, please. The current exception, so the property is zoned rural commercial, which does permit a variety of rural commercial uses. The exception zone 152 also permits office as an additional use, but prohibits a restaurant and a bar. Next slide. Sorry, the Village of the Manotick secondary plan does state that within the mixed residential commercial designation, that limited commercial is permitted, provided it does not compete with the village core. The official plan notes that the village core prohibits any new drive-throughs from going in there. So just to note that this drive-through is not permitted within the village core. Site plan approval is required for any drive-through facilities. So this property is currently going through site plan and will be required to go through any site plan. Next slide, please. So while considering this application, there was numerous things that came up. One of them was traffic. So the existing conditions on Manotick Main Street, as noted by several public comments, are less than ideal, and it often does have some congestion. There are some anticipated future improvements that are planning to occur within there, notably a roundabout south of the subject site, about 150 meters at the intersection of Manotick Main Street and Bridgeport, which will provide some pedestrian connectivity. The Manotick Main Street is also planning to be resurfaced and implementing municipal sewer along this way, although we don't have a timeline for that and unknown at this time, but it is anticipated that there's opportunities for additional improvements to pedestrian connectivity at that time. For this application, a traffic impact assessment was prepared, which does note that there is not anticipated to be a significant impact to current traffic conditions. However, there are certain recommendations that need to be implemented, such as a northbound left turning lane and proper clear throat requirement to prevent any congestion from building up as people enter and leave the site. And it's worth noting too that this property always has had an automobile-centric past use, first starting with the gas station and then the car wash right now. Next slide, please. Village character is definitely a consideration for this application. This is mixed residential commercial as noted, so it does provide this commercial opportunity for the southern area of Manotick Village. 15, as per the official plan, villages are meant to develop into 15-minute neighborhoods, and this commercial opportunity absolutely will help contribute to that ultimate buildup of that 15-minute neighborhood once we have more pedestrian infrastructure implemented into the place there. It is true that it does overlap slightly with what would be the 15-minute radius for the village core, but this is filling a gap within the southern Manotick Village, which is why it is already zoned for commercial uses. trees, site plan, and then kind of how it fits within the larger context is definitely something to consider and is being handled through site plan just to try and maintain as many trees as possible in the orientation of the buildings itself. Next slide, please. Servicing is a consideration for the restaurant and the car wash itself. So it will be serviced by municipal water and a private septic system. So it is currently on private well that will be decommissioned and they will connect to municipal water. There are no city sewers in front of the property right now, so they will have to use a septic system. A hydrogeological and terrain analysis was provided, which demonstrates that the restaurant and drive-through can be supported. Right now, staff are working with the applicant to see if the car wash at the proposed scale can also fit there, but staff are satisfied at a minimum that the restaurant can be supported. Phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment was prepared just to ensure that there was no potential contamination or health risk associated with the past uses, notably the gas station. And of course, drainage and stormwater runoff will be handled in accordance with city policies. So it will not be outletting to the drain that's just on the other side of the rear lot line. That's part of the Mahogany condo corporations. They will be using the city outlet in the front of the property. Next slide, please. Noise and light are always a consideration. So an acoustic assessment report was prepared, which demonstrates that the noise levels are anticipated to be acceptable. However, it is worth noting that the acoustic report addresses the machinery and not the users. The users would be addressed through the zoning, through the noise bylaw. And of course, a site lighting certificate is required for all site plan applications, and that will demonstrate to ensure that light pollution does not occur. Next slide, please. With those considerations in mind, staff are satisfied that the technical reports and the policy do support a restaurant with a drive-through. However, the restaurant has to be tied to the drive-through in the new zoning. So as such, we don't recommend removing the exception zone as the applicant initially proposed. We recommend a new exception zone that will ensure a drive-through is always part of this restaurant, so there's no competition with the village core. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. And we do have also an presentation from the applicant, Jacob Bulldog from Fortan, and Jade Hawkins and Dominic Laduca from Hawkins Property. We'll give you 5 minutes. Sorry, we'll give you time to do your presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'd start off by saying that the staff presentation was very comprehensive, and I appreciate staff for going into such detail. I'm happy to just answer questions, or if you'd like me to run through the slides, I'm happy to do that as well. Okay, please pull up slide 1. Thanks. We can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just an aerial context. You'll note especially on the eastern showing image in the north, in the top right corner, that the property is, as mentioned, about 400 meters south of the village core, which would be located in the very top right of that image. It is generally characterized by other rural commercial uses as well as some residential uses. As mentioned, this is in the mixed residential commercial designation under the village secondary plan. Next slide, please. This is the current site plan. As noted by staff, we are still going through the site plan control process. We did have a very, in my mind, successful public meeting hosted by Councillor Brown's office, where we spent a couple hours talking to residents about the impacts of the zoning bylaw amendment with respect to bringing in a restaurant with a drive-through. But we also focused a lot on the proposed site plan. And so that includes the transportation impacts that you saw, the servicing constraints, the noise study that came up a lot because there was a discussion about how the noise study addresses, for example, the vacuum bays or the car wash, some of the existing uses, but that you can't control for someone playing the radio, for example. And so that was sort of speaking to the noise bylaw coming into effect to control that, which is not something that can be captured through the scope of that type of study. But as noted on this property, there is the car wash, which is replacing the existing car wash. And then there is a proposed restaurant with a drive-through located on the left of the image. We are currently revising the site plan to address a lot of the comments that we received from staff as part of our as part of our technical circulation at site plan. And we're confident at this stage that we can proceed with the zoning bylaw amendment to allow for the use while we resolve a lot of those issues through the site plan. So we're excited to keep working with staff on that and make sure that we're addressing the comments from both staff, the councillor's office, and the public. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we are within the village of Manotick. Noted in red is the village core, which does prohibit under the official plan drive-throughs. So this use could not be proposed in the village core. We are outside of the village core, which is why we believe that a drive-through with a restaurant with a drive-through is an appropriate use because it directly does not compete with the restaurants and the bar scene that you want to maintain in the village core to support that 15-minute community. So that's I think the larger point here is that we're not intending to propose anything that would compete with the village core. This is already an auto-centric site. We are proposing two uses that are fairly auto-centric, but through the site plan process, we have been sure to ensure that there is pedestrian access, especially to the restaurant. Our new site plan is looking actually improving that access and moving the restaurant closer to the street so that people don't have to cross drive aisles or drive-throughs as much. So we are looking at some site plan refinements to speak to that and ensure that this is both serving the traveling public, but also contributing to the 15-minute community that is going to be built up around this area within the village. Next slide, please. Again, under the secondary plan, this is designated mixed residential and commercial. Typical, I would say that the policies do allow for commercial uses that are limited and once again don't compete with those in the village core. And as discussed, proposing a restaurant with a drive-through would not be permitted in the downtown core or the village core. And therefore, we propose that this is not necessarily competing with those uses. That's not the intent. This is located on a high traffic road in order to serve the traveling public. Next slide, please. With respect to zoning, staff nailed it. I don't think I have to speak too much here. The exception 152R specifically prohibits bars and restaurants because those are uses that would compete with sort of the nightlife and the livelihood that you would want in the village core. So while we were initially proposing to remove it, staff came back to us and asked if we could change it to simply permit a restaurant with a drive-through instead of restaurants outright, which would ensure that the future development of the site meets the intent of the application that we're proposing and that there's no change down the road that would remove the drive-through and all of a sudden we do have perhaps a standalone restaurant that would compete. So the zoning does restrict us fairly literally to a restaurant with a drive-through. In this case, I would note that the car wash is an existing use and is already permitted. So if for that portion of the application, we're simply going through the technical studies and working with staff to alleviate those concerns. Next slide, please. Just a sort of a summary of the discussion here, noting that, again, we're about 400 meters from the village core. This use would only be permitted subject to a drive-through with the restaurant. And we don't believe that it competes with the proposed uses that support the 15-minute community in the village core. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Member of committee, any question to the? Go ahead, Councilor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Sean and Jacob. Jacob, I do appreciate the time you and your team took to come out to the public meeting that I hosted. It was a great opportunity for residents in the village to come and voice their concerns directly. I will say that under the new provincial planning, I'll call them restrictions, a public meeting such as this isn't a mandatory practice anymore. And so the fact that you took the time to come out and hear the community directly is not lost on me and certainly by members of the community itself. I also appreciate the clarification that the subject site is not in the village core, and that's something that we've heard from many residents. And I think what staff are proposing to tie the restaurant to a drive-through use to ensure it doesn't compete with those fantastic businesses that we have in the core of Manotick is important. I will say 7 years at City Hall, first year as an elected official, we rarely hear from happy people. It's always somebody with a concern. But in this application, my office has heard almost a one-to-one from positive comments about the application to those that are raising concerns. And I think it's important that my committee colleagues hear that from me. There is demand, which is why I think we've seen so much uptake on this particular item. So I appreciate you coming out and providing that wholesome view as to what's being proposed. And I also appreciate that you continue to listen to the community and through my office and them directly about changes that can be made to the site to enhance what the application is offering. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And I'm looking to see any other member of the committee have questions.
Can I ask a question?
We're gonna go after, that's okay. This is just for the applicant. We're good. Thank you very much, Jacob. We appreciate being here with us this morning. We're gonna go to delegate. We're good.
Just gonna say thank you.
You're welcome. We have a delegation, Jennifer Murphy, I'm not sure, yeah, Jennifer's here with us. And I just wanna, before Jennifer take the seat and we give her 5 minutes, we also wanna make sure we receive a correspondence on that file. We had an email dated October 3rd, 2023 from Grace Thrasher also. Just wanna highlight that one. Jennifer, you have 5 minutes and you can start your presentation for us. And after, if the committee have question, they can ask your question. Thank you.
Imagine I'm standing at the end of Firefly Lane with a friend and they say, isn't there a Starbucks near here? And I say, well, look across those 3 lanes of traffic. Mr. Foden has just said it's a high traffic road, so we can't get there from here. Mr. Chair, I refer to page 7 of the presentation materials where it says lines 2 and 3, no impact to nearby properties. And page 7, the last 2 lines state does not significantly impact accessibility. With respect to these 2 sections on impacts, there are 2 aspects that require further study before accepting this amendment. They are the traffic counts for Firefly Lane and the positioning of the left turn lane. Firstly, in the traffic impact assessment table 16, the traffic counts for Firefly Lane done on Groundhog Day in 2023 stated that only 2 cars turn north from Firefly Lane, and similar counts are expected for the next 5 years. These counts do not reflect the current situation. There will be far more cars and pedestrians entering and exiting. Primarily, the study was done in the winter when COVID restrictions were still in place. Even the federal government didn't require people to return to in-person work until the middle of March. However, the biggest concern is that Canada Post stated in June with a letter to all the residents of Firefly Lane, the existing location for a community mailbox on Main Street at the junction of Firefly Lane was too dangerous. The box was immediately moved round the corner onto Firefly Lane. The mailbox has 32 slots. 12 are required for the residences on Firefly Lane and Herwick Place. But I point out, this is a cul-de-sac. So there were potentially 22 plus the delivery person in cars and on foot who will now both enter and exit Firefly Lane on a regular basis to access that community mailbox. Secondly, let's look at the placement and location of the left turn lane in northbound Main Street. That concerns me. Where will the additional road width come from? Currently, there is a gravel shoulder approximately 7 feet wide. It's bounded by the white line for the northbound lane and a ditch. Will the traffic lanes be moved over to the west onto the subject property? And the thought of all the through traffic rushing by, cyclists and pedestrians, is horrifying. I'm concerned, furthermore, that table 16 only suggests an upgraded paved shoulder, no sidewalks. The left lane is currently proposed to terminate about 20 meters north of Firefly Lane. This implies that left turning southbound vehicular traffic from Firefly Lane will have to cross not only one moving northbound lane, it may even have the fire trucks from the station just down the road, but they will have to squeeze through, stop traffic in the northbound left turn lane, and then find an opening in the southbound lane. Similarly, when returning home southbound from Manotick, traffic for Firefly Lane will need to squeeze through, stop traffic in the northbound left turn lane, and then find an opening in the through lane. We have a similar situation for pedestrians needing to cross Main Street. I can't envisage crossing 3 lanes of traffic on foot. This attempt to cross Main Street is compounded by the fact that the proposed development is a drive-through. It does not rely on customers seating themselves for a leisurely brew. There has been suggestion that vehicles can only turn right from the development. While it has some merit, this means that one vehicle heading north on Main Street and stopping for a brew will pass the end of Firefly Lane, not just once in the left turn lane, not just a second time in the lane heading south to turn at the proposed roundabout, but a third time now in the outside northbound lane. This doesn't seem very realistic to me. The placement and proposed termination about 20 meters north of Firefly Lane, of the left turn lane, will make it hazardous for children being dropped off at the current location in the southbound lane of Main Street. I shudder to think how the children will cross those three lanes of traffic, even if the lights are flashing on the bus. So I have proposed 3 potential mitigating solutions. For pedestrians, maybe we can install a pedestrian-operated crosswalk at the end of Firefly Lane. Maybe for vehicles, even install a traffic light at the end of Firefly Lane. Or a solution which may be more palatable to some is, let's terminate the left turn lane near Firefly Lane, not 20 meters to the north. So that will be near Firefly Lane and Mahogany Harbour Lane. I haven't brought their concerns in here to enter the new facility there. Now, let the facility customers find a way to continue their journey northbound, maybe via the proposed roundabout, rather than putting the onus on nearby residents. And finally, there was also a suggestion in the proposal that customers might use the bus service. There are currently 2 buses heading north in the morning, one at 6 and one at 7. So if you jump off the 6 o'clock bus, grab your cup of coffee and hope to get on the bus at 7, but you can't go home again in the morning. There are currently 2 buses heading south in the evening, one at 5 p.m. and one at 6 p.m. The report suggests there may be more buses in the future. Would you advocate this to support commuters or coffee drinkers? Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you. You're on time. I was going to ask you to wrap up, but thank you very much for your presentation, and I'll see if there are questions. I think Councillor Brown have a few questions for you.
Just a statement of gratitude, Chair. Thank you. And Jennifer, thank you very much. I know you've communicated wholesomely on this issue, and I know you and I have been in contact. I appreciated that you came out to the public meeting and were able to speak to staff there. Many of the concerns that you've raised through your delegation today, I hope will be addressed through site plan. And that's something that we heard both from Sean and Jacob, that those are ongoing, and some of those changes hopefully will make it through during the site plan review. I know Jacob's still sitting back there, but I don't see them running away and cutting off communication with the community. I know this is something that they've said to me that they want to continue. So I appreciate the concerns as you've raised them today. The story's not over. The job isn't done. There's still some changes that need to be made to enhance the site. And I look forward to continuing to working with you on those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other questions? Seeing none, I just want to take a moment to thank you. It takes a lot to our residents to come out and address their concerns, especially what happened in the community. But I heard you loud and clear, and I'm happy that Councillor Brown is working with city staff. Most of the issue that you are highlighted, I want to say they will be through the site plan specific application, and I'm sure your councillors and with city staff and the applicant, they'll work on the enhancement of that site. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your being here this morning. Now we have a question to staff. I think Councillor Clark has questions. Go ahead, Mr. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I know there was some talk in your presentation about mitigation measures or something that is being thought of or done to prevent, traffic backing up from the drive-through onto the road. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Could you explain what those measures are, how it works, and then generally, is there any experiences on your radar through the city that we've done something and it's worked, or what happens if we take those measures and there's still spillover from the drive-through onto the road?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to previous experiences on what has worked and what has not worked. In terms of the mitigation measures, the leftbound turning lane is absolutely something that will help in terms of the queuing to enter the site. The other element that I mentioned was the clear throat requirement. So this is when you turn into the site, we go down the drive aisle, and when is the first turn into the parking lot or into the queue for the drive-through. So right now that clear throat requirement as shown on the previous site plan is only about 3.5 meters for the turn lane that goes to the car wash, and but 7.5 meters for the first parking lot. Their traffic impact assessment noted that it should be at least 20 meters for the clear throat requirement, which would create more room for people queuing up for the drive-through, as well as those leaving the site, just to make sure that it's addressed and won't be queuing up onto the street. Again, that's just, as Jacob mentioned, kind of that revisions that they're looking at towards the site plan.
And is there any associated bylaws with that? Like if there is a drive-through that continuously spills out over onto Carling Road every Wednesday on my drive to City Hall, is there mechanisms that the city has to address that situation at that point?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not that I'm aware of for that one. We do have policies related to clear throat requirements for arterial roads, but in terms of spillover, I'm not aware of any bylaws.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. And any other question? Seeing none, thank you very much, Adam and Sean. I know you can stay seated because next item is coming towards both of you, but report recommendation that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-50 for 5646 and 5650 Manatic, Maine, as shown in document 1 to permit a restaurant with a drive-through as detailed in document 2. Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. That item's carried. We move to 4.3. This is an official plan amendment for zoning bylaw 2545 9th line. And I have Sean and Adam here, but we do have a presentation from staff. Then we go to presentation from the applicant. And then we have a delegation. Then we go to staff. It's same order. So go ahead, Sean and Adam, and thank you very much for being here this morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this presentation is for 2545 9th Line Road, an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. So you can see on the image here, the property is shown as the red star there, which is about just over a kilometer northeast of Metcalfe Village and is directly opposite from a bedrock resource overlay. Next slide, please. This image shows the property in about on either side about a kilometer, and then on the north and south side about 400 to 500 meters, just to give you kind of that aerial context. As you can see, it is surrounded by a significant amount of agriculture as well as significant woodlands, which is the light blue, and then the dark blue, which is unevaluated wetlands. You can see there's a little bit more residential density south along Victoria Street, and you can't see in this image here, but there is more residential to the north as well too. Next slide, please. This is an image just of the property itself, which just shows the build out that has occurred. So there are multiple buildings on the property, infrastructure, drive lanes, stormwater retention ponds along the back of the property. And the total buildings are cumulative size is nearly 1.4 hectares. So quite a significant amount of structures already in play. Next, please. Next slide, please. The applicant's proposal is to reuse the existing buildings and infrastructure, which was previously a mushroom growing facility that has since been shut down, and now they're looking to use this as a soil packaging plant. They would like to redesignate the property rural industrial and logistics and rezone the property from RU, the rural countryside, to the RG zone, the rural general industrial, with exception zones to prohibit uses that are considered incompatible with the soil packaging plant and nearby residential, primarily those that are associated with automotive uses and animal care. Next slide, please. In terms of policy context, the current official plan designation, the rural countryside, does not permit the use. It does permit small scale light industrial, but at nearly 1.4 hectares, it doesn't quite meet small scale. The proposed designation, the rural countryside, the rural logistics and industrial logistics designation, is considered employment areas by the provincial policy statement. The PPS does not permit designating more industrial employment areas beyond the planning horizon, and they also classify employment areas as a cluster of businesses. This proposal does not meet either of those PPS requirements. However, it is worth noting that the PPS does support the reuse of this business, of these structures, and so does the official plan support for diversification of local rural economy. It is worth noting that an ECA will be required from the province for this use, and site plan approval is required as well too. Next slide, please. Considerations. So traffic is something that came up. just the existing conditions, notably just lack of pedestrian connectivity, heavy trucks that could be going through 9th Line, Victoria Street. A traffic impact assessment was prepared, which demonstrates no significant impact to current conditions, noting that they anticipate roughly 30 daily trips for this site, 10 employees and 15 to 20 trucks. 9th Line is not a trucking route, so they would have to, any trucks entering or leaving the site would have to travel south and then go through Victoria Street to their designation, as that is the current trucking route, the nearest trucking route. Next slide, please. The servicing is something to consider here, just the scale of the proposed industrial use. So it will be serviced by private wells and a septic system. It is currently serviced by private well and septic system as well too. A hydrogeological and terrain analysis was prepared, which demonstrates the use can be supported. We're currently just looking at to what degree it can be supported, in what scale, but we are satisfied that it can be supported. Their drainage and stormwater runoff, something to consider, especially with an industrial use. So they already have stormwater and drainage facilities on the site to handle all their needs. Next slide, please. As this is a soil packaging plant with potential for leaf and yard waste compost, depending on business growth, odor is definitely something that we need to consider here, mainly the protrusible versus non-protrusible nature of the materials that they'll be bringing into the soil packaging. Protrusible in this case, meaning that it can decay further and generate more odors. Non-protrusible waste, meaning does not decay and produce odors. It is important to note that through conversations with the applicant, they are looking to bring in topsoil and mix that with compost A and AA, which is a category categorized by the province. These categories are not considered waste under the provincial regulation, so they would not be protrusible waste. Anything else, such as non-agricultural source material, compost category B, would be considered waste material and protrusible waste, and we are not proposing to permit that within the zoning amendment. Leaf and yard waste composting is something that will occur on site and is anticipated to generate some smells to a certain degree. However, they are anticipated to be minimal given the distance from the lot lines. And it's worth noting too that they are regulated under the Environmental Protection Act, Ontario Regulation 101/94, which just notes how leaf and yard waste composting must occur. And also worth noting that the operator of leaf and yard waste needs to keep track of any public comments that are made in terms of odor and how those are addressed. Next slide, please. Compatibility in terms of residential to industrial is absolutely a significant consideration. So there are surrounding residential, as noted in the slide. The adjacent properties are vacant agricultural field and some woodlands, but there are additional residential properties to the north and to the south. So it's something the scale of this proposed industrial activity needs to be catered so it's compatible with the residential uses. And part of that is ensuring that diversification and expansion of industrial uses does not occur, that what they are proposing is limited to that soil and packaging, and we're not permitting additional industrial activities to occur. Next slide, please. The staff recommendation is to maintain the current official plan designation of the rural countryside while permitting the use and adding a site-specific amendment to permit that use. This will maintain the rural character as well as permit the use, but significantly prohibit any future industrial expansion. We propose to limit the use to the proposed limit the proposed use to the existing buildings, again, ensuring that there's no expansion on the current site. This is simply an appropriate reuse of the existing buildings and not further expansion. Limit the leaf and the yard waste composting to strictly an ancillary use, meaning that it cannot be used independently from the soil packaging. Any leaf and yard waste composting can only be used for what is needed for the soil packaging. And as mentioned in the zoning amendment, limit the industrial uses strictly to the soil packaging operation. Do not permit any other additional industrial uses which could be considered incompatible with the area. And of course, just because we are looking to maintain the rural character and the intent of the rural countryside designation, we would like to maintain agriculture as a permitted use and cannabis production, which is a current permitted use. Not proposed by the applicant, but it is a current use that is appropriate to carry forward. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Sean and Adam, and we have also presentation from the applicant, so I think we have Chris Clark and Tracy Zander. I see Chris online.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you want me to run the presentation myself, or is the coordinator going to do that?
No, it's okay. Kelly's just putting it up online and we'll run it through here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
When you're ready.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for having us today, allowing me to present. I just want to expand a bit on Sean's presentation and just go over sort of the previous uses, existing and proposed uses, and sort of what it might mean for the site. Next slide, please. So this is a current aerial of the subject property. It's the most recent aerial on Geo Ottawa. And as Kelly clicks through here, some numbers will show up and I'll explain what each of the buildings are. So the number one there at the front, that's the old office building for the previous use. That's not really part of the proposal. Number two, that's the old mushroom production building, the long rectangular building. Again, there's no real proposed uses in that building. The main uses will start in number three there. That's an old storage bunker that was established by the previous use on the site. It has some infrastructure in place. Same with number four, that's also a storage bunker. These will be for the storage of raw materials. Number five, that is where the old pasteurization took place, as far as I'm aware. This building will be used as well. And then the production line will be in number six. Number seven, those are just some ponds, swim ponds from the previous use. Those are from the mushroom washing that happened with the previous use. There's nothing like that happening with the proposed use, so it's not anticipated those ponds will be in use or full of water at any point. Next slide, please. So the history of the subject property, it previously housed Continental Mushroom, which closed in 2014. Various reports said it employed over 200 people at the time, one of the largest rural employers in Ottawa. And one of the main parts of their business was compost production. They supplied their own medium and growing for mushrooms that they grew on the site. So there was quite a bit of compost generation on site in order to facilitate their previous use. Next slide, please. So here's just an old photo I was able to find prior to some of the newer development that happened. And if Kelly clicks once more, you can see there's an area there where they stored the compost outdoors and did all the composting activity outside. Next slide, please. So now you can see this is a later photo towards 2002, I believe it was. And if Kelly clicks once more, they built those buildings and started doing the composting and stuff inside. So it was more self-contained on the property. These buildings are set up with aeration and drainage for compost. So it's a good reuse of the site for phase 3 when they do get into the leaf and yard waste composting. Next slide, please. So as Sean pointed out, we're looking to use existing buildings on site. A mixing line will be installed in the old mushroom pasteurization building. So some of the stuff will be removed from that building and a new line put in. The product is packaged, stacked, and will be stored behind that old long rectangular mushroom growing building. So it'll be screened from the road. And the leaf and yard waste composting is not proposed at the start. That is something that will happen later, closer to 3 to 5 years down the road. Next slide, please. This is just a quick aerial showing what's proposed for the site, the production line, where the storage is going to be. And the one building there that's sort of in the middle of everything, that's the oldest building on the site. That might be rebuilt in the same location during phase 2, which I'll go through in a minute. Next slide, please. So phase one is just reuse of existing buildings, 5 to 10 employees for daily operations, and they're anticipating anywhere from 10 to 15 truckloads per day outbound of product in peak season. Peak season being February to May. The off season, when not as many people are buying these products, the truck traffic should be much lower. No new construction is proposed for phase one. Next slide, please. Phase two, dependent on business growth, they may put a second mixing line in and they might reconstruct the old building on site. If additional site plan control is needed at that time for phase two, then we'll go through the necessary steps to do that. There would be no composting activity proposed in phase two. Next slide, please. Phase three would occur about 3 to 5 years after approval. This is when leaf and yard waste composting would be introduced. And it's important to point out that in the earlier phases, they're going to be importing these materials by truck. Whereas when the leaf and yard waste compost comes in, it's not going to be increasing truck traffic because they're just changing what materials are coming in. Next slide, please. So producible versus non-producible waste. As Sean pointed out, producible often break down. They have those sort of smells like ammonia, sulfur smells are what you normally find. Non-producible waste, they don't break down in the same way, don't have quite the same odors. Next slide, please. So there are several comments about impacts on water. A hydrogeological report was completed by GHD Engineering, and I wanted to point out that no water is being added to the soils in the soil mixing process. This isn't a water user as opposed to the previous mushroom use, which had lots of mushroom washing and various uses that needed water. Next slide, please. Traffic impacts, those were touched on by Sean. So I'll just point out, as he did, Victoria Avenue is the main trucking route in the area. It's about 335 meters south of the property. So that would be where trucks would go. Next slide, please. In terms of odor, we don't anticipate near the odor generation that continental mushroom would have had, simply because of the type of composting that's proposed. And we don't anticipate any odor in the earlier phases because we're talking about a dry, stable product that's packaged and stored. Next slide, please. The official plan amendment, as Sean pointed out, a rural countryside exception to permit a soil packaging plant with leaf and yard waste composting. We're going to keep the existing rural countryside designation. We had proposed rural industrial and logistics, but as Sean pointed out, there were PPS restrictions that required us to not go with that designation. Next slide, please. In terms of the zoning bylaw, we're going to an RG exception, or a rural general industrial exception zone, to permit the leaf and yard waste composting and the soil mixing. There has been cannabis production facility mentioned here and there. There's no intention for cannabis production on this site. Next slide, please. And in summary, this is reuse of an existing property, regeneration of existing building stock, as Sean pointed out, supported by the PPS. All the infrastructure is already in place. Non-producible waste should result in less odors during the composting, and everything has been fully supported thus far by all the supporting studies that have been done. Next slide. And just quickly, a couple photos. These are the 2 storage bunkers where the materials would be stored. This photo was taken in the summer when I visited the site. Next slide. This is the back of the mushroom growing building. So as you can see where things are stacked along there, that is similar to how things would be stored and stacked once they're finished on the property. Next slide. This is the front of the mushroom storage building and just a view of the office building that's at the front of the site. We don't anticipate any activity here in phases 1 or 2. There might be some additional future open storage at the front, but we will install some screening along the road to further screen that out. Next slide, please. This is just a view down 9th Line Road towards Victoria Avenue. So this is the path that the trucks would be taking. As you can see, there's a sight line straight down to the stop sign. So we don't anticipate there's going to be traffic interactions based on cars not being able to see the trucks coming in and out of the site. Next slide, please. And finally, this is just a picture from Victoria Avenue, the closest dwelling on Victoria looking towards the site. And as you can see, much of the trees and vegetation around sort of block the visual impact of what's happening on site. So we're hoping there shouldn't be much visual issues with some of the surrounding residences. Thank you for your time. I apologize for going slightly over time, but given the nature of the application, I appreciate the extra bit of time there. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. And it's important for the delegation and of course, who's online listening and to our community to explain the usage on that side because there is so many questions around it. And I really appreciate the presentation in detail. So thank you very much. I have a quick question before. Let me see if anybody has a question for you. Seeing on a quick question, did I understood you have all, is it going to be a retail store inside this or this is strictly commercial?
To you, Mr. Chair, the applicants, ASB Green World, had talked about the potential for having something like that is permitted in the underlying RG zone, I believe, to have a retail store. We did include it in the rezoning request to give us that flexibility, but as phase one, that's not proposed. It's strictly the soil mixing to start.
Thank you very much, Chris. I really appreciate it. I'll have a delegation. We're going to go to delegation right now. We have Tim Parsons, and I think Ann Parsons also here, but we're going to let Chris go first. We have presentation, I guess, from Chris. Oh, sorry, Tim. Sorry. Yeah, Tim.
Good morning.
Tim, good morning. You have 5 minutes, but because we're allowing the applicant to go a little bit over, so take your time and go ahead with the presentation for the committee.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, an introduction. My name is Tim Parsons. I'm a longtime resident of Metcalfe. I'm also a property owner on a piece of property within close proximity of the site on 2545 9th Line Road too as well. My family lives on 9th Line. That's where I grew up. I actually grew up right across from the mushroom farm. Actually, I don't know whether it's never been mentioned, but there is a property that is directly across from the old mushroom farm. And it's back in the bush. And so that's where I grew up. That's where my mother lives. And my son also lives on 9th Line, just up the road. So I went through the recommendation report, and I do still have a number of concerns with the zoning amendment application. And my concerns fall into several areas. First of all, this amendment to the RU, rural countryside zoning, is not compatible with the surrounding area, which is predominantly residential and agriculture. There is no industrial activity now in that area. Okay, and the mushroom farm was in fact agricultural, it wasn't industrial. Another area of concern that I'd like to raise is the environmental impact on noise, water, light, pollution, and smell. Some of these things were touched on in previous presentations and some responses to that, but I'm going to go into it a little bit more in detail a little bit later on. And then on the subject matter of increased truck matter, I'll dive into that a little bit more. One thing that there has been, based on the report that I read, there is a significant amount of opposition to this amendment. In fact, 12 parties responded with comments, and a number of people are making presentations today. So, you know, I don't seem to understand why these comments are not being fully taken into account. There was no, in the comments, there was no actually anybody that said, yes, this is a good idea, we want to continue. So there is a significant amount of opposition to that. Next slide, please. So on the compatibility use question, as I said previously, there is no industrial activity in this area right Because of the current uses of the surrounding properties, which is residential and agriculture, this amendment would allow for industrial activity near a number of these residents and within close proximity to the village of Metcalfe. Okay, close proximity. I think there was a figure of a kilometer. It's probably closer, but we'll go with a kilometer. Certainly, if you were to look at rezoning the property from rural countryside to rural industrial, you would potentially looking at a situation like we have on Highway 31 or Bank Street, which is, I don't think, certainly a focal point of how beautiful Ospey Township or the city of Ottawa is. It's quite an eyesore. So certainly setting up a large industrial zone or a large zone with rural industrial designation would potentially lead to something more in the future. Next slide, please. So, no, if you could go back one, which is the second slide of the compatible use. Thank you. So in the report, the ones in italics, and they're quotes. So the first thing is that the proposal to redesignate the subject site to rural industrial and logistics, which my understanding is an RG designation, is not in keeping with the intent of the official plan or the provincial policy statement. Okay, so the report itself says this shouldn't be an RG zone. Okay, and then it goes on to say that it would be more specific, it would be more appropriate to change the site, to create a site-specific official plan amendment, keep the rural countryside designation, and allow the use of reuse of those buildings to allow for the proposed business. Okay, so let's revisit that because it is important. It says we shouldn't be rezoning it to an RG designation and allow industrial activity there. And yet we should make an official change or an exception to the rural countryside designation to allow the proposed use. That being said, like it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, in one way you're saying, well, it's not appropriate to rezone it to industrial, but then in another way you're saying, yeah, but maybe what we can do is we can make an exception to the rural countryside designation to allow industrial activity on that site. It is somewhat contradictory. Next slide, please. So on the environmental impact under noise, there will be increased noise because there's activity. Okay, you know, there's going to be activity with moving the soil from the storage activity to so there's going to be machinery running back and forth. There will be noise from the increased truck traffic for sure. But as far as I know, no study has been done on what the impact of noise in the area will be, keeping in mind it's rural countryside with residents, okay? So we don't know because there wasn't a study done on that, so no statement was made on that. The one thing that's very important that any noise overnight, okay, would be unacceptable in an area with residences. The mushroom farm, okay, because it was agricultural, they were allowed to operate at all hours of the day. There were trucks going in there at night. There were trucks going in there in the middle of the morning. They were blowing or honking their horn to get access to the property, okay? I would not want to see this occur again, okay? So noise is certainly a concern. Next slide, please. I understand there's been a water study and the type of business that's being proposed is different from the mushroom farm. However, there is still a concern because we all, you know, it shares an aquifer with the surrounding properties or potentially shares an aquifer depending on the depths of the wells. So there is always the potential of contaminating the surrounding wells. Certainly with, you know, there is going to be yard waste. There will be contaminants from that yard waste. If they're not handled properly, they could potentially contaminate the neighboring wells. Next slide, please. Light pollution. Okay, so we don't know what that's going to be. Are there going to be large yard lights on? There's no statement on when this business will be allowed to operate. Will it be a 24/7 operation? Certainly, if it's a 24/7 operation, that is a significant impact on noise, impact on light pollution, and potentially impact on trucks running in the middle of the night. Okay, so there's no statement on that. Don't know. Certainly, I would be concerned. Next slide, please. Traffic concerns. Now, a couple things on this. First of all, the truck route is Metcalfe. Metcalfe has, Victoria Street now already has significant truck traffic. I will challenge anybody to go down to the middle of Metcalfe any time of day and not see a truck in the middle of Metcalfe. There are businesses and residents all along that road. That road is particularly narrow right where the main business is. Okay, the trucks actually have to cross the center lane if there's there's parking permitted on both sides of that street. So, you know, well, we're only going to bring 20 more trucks in. There's already a significant danger from trucks in the village of Metcalfe through Victoria Street. 9th line is not designated as a trucking route. Trucks go down there all the time. They use that because they don't want to do the 50 through Victoria Street, so they're using 9th line now already. Okay, so they're already using it. There was a truck death. A trucker died on that road this summer because it's not a suitable road to drive down. That's why it's not a trucking route, but trucks use it. They will use it to avoid Victoria. Okay. So there certainly is a significant danger of trucking in the area. Okay.
Tim, I
Next
like
slide.
to, there is 2 more slides. If you can wrap up,
Yeah.
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. Okay, so first of all, yes, the last thing on the trucking, okay, is what happens if there's more than the 20 trucks? Business grows great. It's getting bigger and bigger, bigger. It becomes a significant size, and there's more than 20 trucks. There's 50 trucks, 60 trucks. There's nothing in this amendment that says, hey, what's going to happen then? Okay. Next slide, please. So here are my recommendations, what I'd like to see. First of all, the amendment to rezone it to a rural industrial or RG designation, whether with an exception or not, I think should be rejected, okay? I think it should be maintained as a rural countryside zoning designation. There should be something in the amendment that would limit the hours of operation so it cannot become a 24/7 operation. There's got to be something in there that says, hey, what, you know, there's now 100 trucks coming there a day, not 20. What does that mean? Okay. And a restriction on the compost material that certainly I would not want to see it transition slowly to start seeing garbage trucks with compost from the city of Ottawa rolling down that road every day. Okay. The site should continue with its rural countryside or RU designation. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim, for the presentation and the detail that were involved in and the concern that you raised. I want to see if anyone have questions from the committee. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much. And Tim, thank you very much for that presentation. Very comprehensive. I'm not intimate with this file as you are, but is there a proposed use that you believe the community would support on the site?
That's actually a very good question. Certainly to reuse it. It's currently being used now. Mr. McDonald currently operates some storage facilities in that site. So, storage of vehicles, storage of personal property. There is a couple of other businesses. There's Mr. Donut rents space on that site, or did rent space on that site at one point in time to make donuts. There is certainly right now it's being used to store a significant amount of wood that sells from that property. I would like to just add one more thing. We're all aware, I'm sure we're all aware, that there's also another zoning application that will probably hit the planning here to redesignate the property across the street from mineral reserve to mineral extract. I would not like to see this rezoned from rural countryside to rural industrial, which would be, considered certainly, the aggregate company would say, hey, look, across the street, it's rural industrial, it's not rural countryside. And that would certainly clear some of their, an obstruction for them to redesignate the reserve to extract. So that is another concern. I know it's not specific to this particular amendment, but it has a factor on that one.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I do have questions, Chair, for staff, but I can hold if you'd like.
Yeah, we're gonna go to staff after. Tim, thank you very much. I really appreciate the presentation. Next, we have Mr. Mark Sauvé. I see Mark. Mark, you have your 5 minutes and.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you perfectly, Mark. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had hoped to come in person, but schedule didn't allow. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. A lot of the questions that I had in my prepared statement have already been answered. So again, thank you to the presenters, anyone who's had something to say about this. But I will, if you'll indulge me, I took the time to prepare, and I've had questions as the president of the Metcalfe Community Association. I've had people reach out to me, so please indulge me. And if you find me out of order, please stop me, and I won't be offended. Thank you. On behalf of them, and I will read from my text because I'm not as eloquent as most of the speakers that have been on today, and I'll try not to rush too fast. On behalf of the Metcalfe Community Association, I would like to thank the members of the city's Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee for hearing us on the proposed official plan before us. Firstly, I would like to state on behalf of the Metcalfe Board of Directors that we are very pleased in knowing that this application is site-specific. There is a concern by residents in Metcalfe and surrounding areas that any future industrial development will detract from the rural character of our village, as commented and referred to by others. We understand that the meeting today is only to review the applicant's request to have this site rezoned and not what may or may not happen to this property in the future. However, if it is approved and there is a development on this site, we do have concerns, and we ask to be heard. Thank you. This is so that the committee may get a sense of how the residents feel about this possible rezoning and what may transpire on this site in the future. We ask that you please indulge us, and away I go. When the Continental Mushroom Plant closed in 2014, the village of Metcalfe not only lost one of its largest economic drivers, but an integral member of the community. The 200 or so employees of this factory were an important fabric of the community. They would often be seen in the village making purchases at the local shops, chatting with residents at the bank or post office, or just being met by chance on the street. Although many did not reside in Metcalfe, we considered them neighbors, so it was a sad day when the business shut down. Having said that, there was a positive side effect of the plant closing its doors, and that is the immediate reduction in traffic heading east and west on Victoria Street through the village of Metcalfe. The rural Ottawa had somehow returned. The many 53-foot trailers, the cube and box vans that used this route to get to the plant was reduced to almost zero. Only if you resided in the village would you be able to appreciate the impact of that traffic reduction. Fast forward to late 2021 with the opening of the Amazon Distribution Center on Boundary Road, just outside the Metcalfe city limits, and the commercial traffic has again become a huge concern in the village. There is only so much, the main street is only so wide. In winter, the cars parked on the side of the road allow only so much traffic to go through. There are 53-foot trailers, tandem trailers, and delivery vehicles of all sizes and shapes that use this route day and night, 7 days a week, also to access Boundary Road, to get to Amazon Distribution Center or to Highway 417 heading east. Add this truck volume to the traffic that today goes east and west through Metcalfe daily from the growing communities of Russell and Embrum, heading west in the morning and east in the afternoon, and the residents have reason to be concerned. I'm going to go quick now. The MCA recently hosted a town hall meeting for residents of Metcalfe and surrounding areas, with the topic of the evening being traffic safety and enforcement. Councillor Giroux was on hand, as were Phil Laundrie and Riley Carter from the City of Ottawa staff, and we thank them. Representatives of OPS were also in attendance. Although traffic and safety enforcement were the intended topic for the evening, the main concern and feedback from the residents in attendance was truck traffic in the village. It is a common theme throughout Ottawa, and we are aware that the City of Ottawa is doing its best to address this issue, but it is a concern. The response from our guests at the head table was, understandably, there are not enough resources as it stands to monitor existing traffic load, and that the City of Ottawa has no control over the amount of traffic that passes through the village. Although disappointing, completely understandable. Presently, the intersection of Cartwright Road and Victoria Street in Metcalfe I'm almost finished. Presently, the intersection of Cartwright Road and Victoria Street in Metcalfe is being reconfigured to address the number of vehicles and traffic flow entering and leaving Metcalfe due to safety reasons. In the statement by the applicant, Transport Impact Assessment anticipates 10 employees and 15 to 20 heavy vehicles daily. All trucks entering or leaving the site must utilize Victoria Street, which is the closest truck route, hence what I mentioned above. This is a red flag to our residents. If this application to rezone is approved and there's a development of the site of a yard and leaf waste facility, which would necessitate the increase in truck traffic, the Metcalfe Community Association would like to go on record that if required, the City of Ottawa will work with the MCA to review the intersection of Victoria Street and 9th Line. If turn lanes are required or some other way of having the traffic flow in a better way, we hope that the city will be open for discussion. Metcalfe has been very fortunate over the last several years to have the support of the councillor in our ward, who has worked with residents through the MCA to address road safety issues in other locations in and around the village. And we look forward to this relationship continuing. We understand that your hands are tied on the issue of traffic volume, but we would like to be put on the record that more traffic and not less traffic is very much a concern to the residents of Metcalfe. Again, nothing the City of Ottawa can do about this traffic volume, and not relevant to this rezoning, but pertinent to this discussion. What is in control of the City of Ottawa, however, is the approval of this application to rezone. We understand that if the application is approved and a leaf and yard waste facility does become a reality, this will be an economic driver for our area and become a benefit to local business. However, it has its caveats. The village of Metcalfe not only needs to attract new businesses, the village of Metcalfe not only needs to attract new residents, but businesses as well. I thank you for your time. And as I'm closing, I would like to ask if these PowerPoints are available either online, so I can share with our MCA members, or if they're available to be sent to me directly. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Bye.
Thanks, Mark. And to answer the question, we'll be sending you those presentations. Kelly will be sending them to you, to your email. And I want to take the time to thank you very much for being here this morning and raising the concern that our community has. And I know I've been working very closely concerning the truck trafficking and the modification of most intersection. But, you know, I will go also on record to say that Victoria is truck route, and that's something historically existed. And historically also that we do have, unfortunately, the businesses in our community that they benefit from also from the economy, rural economy driving. So it is challenge, and I'm not saying in any mean that we have solution for it, but with the advocacy of the community association and our resident and our working with our Ottawa Police and Traffic Unit, we're trying to minimize the impact. But thank you very much for being here this morning on behalf of myself and my member of the committee. But I want to see if anyone have a question for you through my committee from the committee. Oh, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mark, and I appreciate it. And our next delegation is Ann Parsons. Just because. On.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm Ann Parsons, mother of Tim, who went on at great length for us. Anyway, I have concerns about the industrial thing, but if it's site specific, this seems reasonable. But I was a little distressed when he said there was a plan 3 coming up. Things do tend to expand, and I can see me being paved over opposite my house and lights and traffic and all the rest of it. If we stay just with the site-specific thing, that would be more agreeable. I must agree with everybody about the truck traffic. I have great big aggregate trucks drive by me up and down several times a day. Dear me, I should have written it down. I've sort of forgotten what I'm about. Anyway, the quarry coming up it's not sort of probably officially there, but it's something of great concern to us too. I'd rather we stayed a rural community without trucks and banging. When the mushroom farm went in, my well went from 175 feet to 300. So I'm a little leery about whatever's going on across the road from me. So I had quite a few excitements with the mushroom farm. They put up a fence, and then the trucks used to have to blow their horns to get in. It was quite noisy. The smell in those days was really quite offensive too, but luckily I got measles and lost my sense of smell. So there we go. That was useful. But then they had the workers living in trailers, and my dog got shot. You know, I mean, all sorts of things can happen. So if we can keep this industrial thing to the absolute minimum, I should be happy. Well, almost happy. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. I appreciate you being here, and I know Tim, on your behalf, did very good, pleasant presentation and in detail. Any question for Anne? I want to thank you for being here, and we'll be working with the staff to making sure to minimize the impact. I remember the days of the continental mushroom. I remember the smell in the village when especially the wind come ears.
Oh, yeah, it was
and
quite
I'm
strong.
sure you heard all the trucks because the operation was 24 hours. We'll ask some question about the operation time and everything. So thank you very much for being here. Owen. Thank you. Next presenter is Linda Muckle, and thank you very much, Linda, for being here this morning and actually bringing Anne with you. So thank you very much.
Hello. A lot of the issues have been covered that about it. The reason we went to site specific is because there was concern raised that the larger the place could get without having to ask for permission to do so. And also across the street, we have the the properties have been purchased by a quarry. We do not want to have anything that is considered industrial anywhere nearby. We do not want that to be something that the quarry can come through and say, you have industrial across the street. Why can't we be industrial as well? We're just a quarry. And they'll also bring a few more trucks to go along with it. The trucking is a big issue. I was interested in one of the pictures there that they showed across from the site, and they didn't show the site that showed the demolition that happened to the property across the street to make it available to the quarry. It's a small village. We're, of course, always worried about wells and septic. I have nothing against Xander plan. I think that they have possibilities, but I do not want anything that says industrial anywhere in our area, because that is going to make it so much easier for the quarry. And we also want to make sure that it's site specific, so they have to stay within the parameters that are there now. If they're decent people to work with and they look after the property well, and if they maybe would be nice enough to help us fight the quarry. Anyway, that's basically, we've got it down to site specific. It was changed originally where they had all sorts of possibilities for additions, etc. Now they have to at least go through the council to expand the business. And the traffic, Highway 31, I don't know if Xander Plan has ever driven down Highway 31. It used to be scenic. It looks like an industrial wasteland now, and I really don't want our road to look like that. I do not want Metcalf to have all their houses start to disappear. The rest is basically covered, but that's my reason why I don't want you there, unless we can make sure that we don't have a quarry that uses you in order to get their quarry blasting started. I think I'm done.
Thank you very much, Linda, and I appreciate your presentation, and I know how emotional you're about it. You and I had a discussion prior to the meeting, and we had some good conversation and explanation about the site specific. But I want to see if the committee member have a question for you before you leave. I see none. Thank you very much. We appreciate your being here this morning, and I will ask some question after.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda. Now we have I think that's conclude our delegation and question to staff from anyone. Yeah, go ahead.
Just in regards to the designation industrial, I'd like to explore that a little further. I get the sense that when people think industrial, they think smokestacks and lots of trucks driving, which I think the traffic impact will be real. But when I look at what they're planning to do here versus what they were doing before, seems it's not the same, but somewhat similar. So what makes this industrial? Like, and is it, if that's the case, is it light industrial? Like, I know there's different classifications of industrial. So what would this be in terms of that classification?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be classified as light industrial because they're taking previous made products, which would be the compost and the topsoil, and then making a finished product out of those. So light industrial.
And just in terms, I know we've heard today a couple of times, and I know this is common, the slippery slope argument about if we make this property industrial, what's to stop other companies from coming in and doing that? So just hypothetically, if with the light industrial, and I know that we're talking site specific today, but just generally, what does that allow? Would light industrial allow for quarry activity?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the quarry is completely separate on a different property.
Yeah.
This site is not related in any way to the quarry. can't comment on if this would make it easier for the quarry to be established. It's really
Sorry.
outside the scope of this application.
Sorry, I think you might just misinterpreted
Oh,
the,
sorry.
so just the light, generally speaking, light industrial, would that allow for a quarry anywhere?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I did.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. Question for staff. In terms of what is permitted currently on the site, if I wanted to purchase the site and start up another mushroom farm or a dairy farm or a beef feedlot operation, would I be able to do that today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you could establish the mushroom facility again. Anything in terms of livestock would be subject to minimum distance separation provincial guidelines, but they are permitted under agriculture currently.
Okay, thank you. And so if I, for example, wanted to start up another mushroom farm at this location, I'd be permitted to bring in human and animal waste. I think it's, I can't pronounce the word correctly, but the really smelly stuff.
Yeah.
I would be permitted to bring that on site, whereas through this application, the really smelly composting material would not be permitted as a use of the leaf and yard waste compost process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I'm very sympathetic to the trucking concerns. The village of Manotick in my ward and just on the border of Councillor Drew's is subject to a high volume of truck traffic. So I can certainly understand why you wouldn't want to see many additional trucks driving down your road. But based on what the site used to be, you know, more than 200 employees a day and a larger operation, what's being proposed today is much smaller in scope than what was there previously. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I think what the applicant is proposing here appears to be quite reasonable as long as they continue to work with the councillor's office and the community to address those concerns. And by reusing the buildings on site, I think they're trying to limit their impact on the surrounding community by keeping their footprint small. So again, very sympathetic to the concerns, but I think what we're looking at here is quite reasonable and has a lower impact on the surrounding residents and community than another mushroom farm starting up. So I appreciate the answers to my questions, Chair. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown, and thank you very much, staff. I do have a few questions from what I heard from our delegation. I just from a perspective of the actual application, when the applicant apply, I just want to make sure to kind of put a context to the committee member that where we was and what we went and how we end up here. Can you please give us a little bit background on the specific application?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair, the initial application was made to change the official plan designation to rural, industrial, and logistics. That official plan designation does permit a wide variety of industrial uses, including light and heavy industrial. And then they would have a zoning to go with that, which would implement the official plan policies, and then that would permit the industrial activity. Through discussions with the applicant, it was determined that the rural industrial and logistics zone designation, the official plan designation, was not appropriate because it did provide that opportunity for further diversification and expansion of industrial activity, which was not what we were looking for. We were looking for an appropriate reuse of this site that already has a lot of the infrastructure in place in terms of composting and production lines. It really was a mushroom facility. It is agriculture, but it was agriculture at an industrial scale. So we were able to talk to the applicant, limit that down, keep the current official plan designation, the rural countryside official plan designation, while just permitting the site-specific soil packaging and no other types of light industrial.
Thank you very much, Sean. I know that, and just to put it in a different perspective, we didn't give them carte blanche. So basically, the application came at a full industrial in our communities in rural areas, and we kind of limited. We work with the applicant because this site really exists, and if it's today the applicant decide to open back the mushroom farm, which is, you heard it from our delegation and I heard it from our community, and I lived in this community, so I know the impact from a trucking perspective, from smell perspective, from any other thing. Also, I want a quick question to clarify. This site is allowed as today without coming to this committee for cannabis production?
Yes, that's correct.
So this is doesn't stop the applicant today to go out and have cannabis growing production on site today as we speak. So this is really limited to the packaging of topsoil and distributing back into the community, back into the city and to the community. From an environmental perspective, we heard that there could be impact on wells and water, and I'd like to know also about your comment concerning the noise and the operation. And I know the time operation is not within our we cannot control the time of operation. It will be nice for us to have some answers from the applicant before council. That will be great. But if we can, you can comment on the water and the noise and the operation.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the water, a hydrogeological report was prepared to demonstrate that the septic impact assessment can accommodate the use without impacting neighboring wells or the aquifer. It also examined the current well supply to prove that it can support the current use right now. So that is something that we're going through, and it does demonstrate support at this time without impacting neighboring wells. In terms of noise, there was no trigger for a noise study to be complete. So that is, we did not ask for that study because we do not have the ability to ask for that study. In terms of light, again, this is subject to site plan approval, so we would require a lighting certificate demonstrating no light pollution or spillover onto adjacent properties or onto the city right of way. So I know there's a public comment made about big floodlights for open storage. Those would have to be within the guidelines.
Thank you. Question, this application will come back to site plan, I'm assuming. And at that time, we probably can kind of get some answers about the light and the operation and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, that is correct. It's currently going through site plan control. So lighting will absolutely have to be as part of the approval process. We need that signed lighting certificate by a professional engineer.
Thank you. And staff looked at, I understand from the applicant, he mentioned there will be no water and mixing of soil or material on site. So there will be any impact from that mixing to go seep into the ground and goes into the well. Do we have, there is any of that operation on
I can't comment too much in terms of the soil mixing. That would really be handled by the provincial ECA process in terms of that potential contamination. Again, they're not using the water within the soil packaging, so the hydrogeological report didn't account for that one. But in terms of the actual mixing of the process, that would be handled through the ECA.
Yes, so they still have to have subject of ECA in case they want to operate different or bring some other material or product into the site.
That's correct.
I have another quick question. Sorry, I'm asking lots of questions. Those are lots of comment I heard from the delegation, and I want to bring them up to have them on record. Concerning, are we setting ourselves or there's set any precedence for any future industrial? Councillor Kelly touched base a little bit on that, but will this application have any impact on a future application? And why I'm saying that, because there is rumor and there is talk that the adjacent property was sold to a quarry or to an aggregate operation. Will this set us to any precedence?
Through you, Mr. Councillor, through Mr. Chair, no. The site-specific amendments actually significantly limit any potential industrial activity. It really does keep this to just the existing buildings, recognizing this appropriate reuse of it. It is not meant to facilitate any other industrial activity or quarries or anything of that nature.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. I know I asked lots of questions before we come to the meeting today, and I want to thank you for your due diligence, Adam and yourself, on working on a file and working with my hundreds of thousands of questions that I've been asking in the last 3 months, and I understand we dim down the operation to make sure that it is specific. We don't open any other industrial use, so we don't have wide usage on that site. I want to thank both of you for working with us in the community, and I want to also go on record. I look at it from a perspective of rural economy development. It's better to be able to use that site with a minimum impact to the community. But what you put, it's not in our control, and sometimes opportunity comes and rise, and we make sure that we'll be able to work with the community. And I understand the traffic, it's an issue, but that's an issue anywhere. If it doesn't matter what we put on that site, we're gonna be dealing, and we will be dealing with those issues. Councilor Brown and I are working also on truck traffic in Manatic, and I know how close and dear to the community, to our community member, and it is tough file, and it is hard for us to deal with them at the same time, but slowly and surely we'll be addressing all these. So those are my comments. Thank you very much both, and I really appreciate it. We're gonna go to the recommendation. Any other question? Or that Agricultural Welfare Committee Council approve an amendment to the official plan for 2545 9th Line Road as shown document 1 to permit soil packing plant with leaf and yard waste composting as an ancillary use while remaining within the rural countryside designation as detailed in document 2, and 2, that the Agricultural Welfare Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-50 for 2545 9th Line Road as shown in document 1 to rural general industrial with an exemption to limit the uses to a soil packing plant with leaf and yard waste composting as a conditional ancillary use as detailed in document 2. Can we have a vote on that motion? Is it carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the work. I appreciate everyone. Now we move to our second part of our meeting. And I want to mention that we don't have any in-camera items, but we want to go to, I have a statement I have to read before we present 5.1. And that's that beginning of the meeting, an engineer report for October 2023. This meeting is only for the purpose of considering the amendment to the engineer report amendments to the Simpson Municipal Drain construction of the Baltimore branch and modification of branch 3 and the bylaw, and to receive any written or oral submissions with respect to the technical aspect of the engineer report. Consideration of appeals to assessment by landowners will be heard by the Court of Revision at another time, yet to be determined. All assessed landowner will be provided with a written notice to the time and place of the convening of the Court of the Revision, and we will be provided with an opportunity to file and appeal their assessment by submitting in writing to the clerk. The procedure will be as follows. Mr. Andy Robinson, an engineer Robinson Consultant, Inc. will provide a presentation. Each landowner will have 5 minutes to explain their concern with respect of their property and the technical aspects of the engineer report. After each landowner presentation, the members of ERAC may ask questions to the landowner or Mr. Robinson. After all the landowner presentations have been heard, ERAC, Agricultural Welfare Committee members, will consider the staff report recommendation. So having read that, thank you very much. And we have, it's an item 5.1. We have our staff, Dave Ryan, and we have our consultant representation, Lauren Franklin and Mr. Andy Robinson here in front of us. And we do have a presentation, I understand. So we'll go through the presentation if that's possible.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and it's nice to be back at a actual in-person meeting. I think this is the first one we've done in a long time. So this is the presentation for the Simpson Municipal Drain. That would be the construction of the Biltmore branch and modifications to branch 3. Next slide. So this is the location plan. The red solid line indicates the extension for the Biltmore branch, and the red dash dot line on this plan shows the existing drainage area boundary that surrounds branch 3. Both of these branches are ultimately part of the broader Simpson Municipal Drain, which runs from north to south on this plan. The blue line generally indicates the alignment of the drain. Next slide. The Simpson Municipal Drain was originally constructed in 1969 under provision of a report from Graham Burnham and Associates Limited and dated September 2nd, 1969 and revised on November 25th, 1969. So aging quite significantly now. Next slide, please. Robbins Consultants was appointed by the City of Ottawa on October 9th, 2019 to complete a new engineer's report for the Simpson Municipal Drain, creating an extension of the existing municipal drain for the Biltmore branch. The new engineer's report for the Simpson Municipal Drain Biltmore branch was initiated under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, which is a petition by the road authority in this case to improve drainage for Fallowfield Road, Munster Road, and Biltmore Crescent. It's kind of a legacy issue that a lot of this drainage was brought in at the time when the when Biltmore Crescent was developed, brought into the drainage area from outside of the drainage area, and the report at that time was not updated. Next slide. An on-site meeting of the affected landowners was held on November 14th, 2019. The primary concerns expressed at the on-site meeting included who would pay for the drain, who deals with the subdivision stormwater management pond, and will work at alleviate flooding concerns specifically in the Biltmore Crescent subdivision. Next slide. Construction of the Simpson Municipal Drain Biltmore branch include improved drainage capacity for lands and roads, increasing the capacity of the current cross sections, a fair and equitable distribution of costs for the construction and future maintenance. We note that a significant portion of the cost occurred is assessed to the City of Ottawa as a special benefit on the basis of the requirements for improved road drainage and, as I said, the legacy issue of the drainage that was brought in without being properly updated. Improvement to the Simpson Municipal Drain Branch 3 is required to provide sufficient outlet for the Biltmore branch that is being constructed and for the drainage that currently comes into that branch. The next slide. The following works will be implemented for the modifications to the Simpson Municipal Drain Branch 3. So that's replacement of select culverts due to capacity issues. As I said, there were also many of the culverts were put in 1969, so improving them at this time is a net benefit. Establishment of a smooth and positive slope profile along the entire length of the drain. So there's some issues in the transition from the Biltmore subdivision to branch 3 that don't allow for proper outlet. The next slide. The following works will be implemented for the construction of the Simpson Municipal Drain Biltmore branch. So that's channel widening for improved capacity. Only one side of the channel is widened to minimize disruption and erosion potential. A new drain is to be constructed along Munster Side Road. That is the area where there's current flooding that comes across Munster Road, but doesn't quite make it to the subdivision ditches and ultimately out through branch 3. So there's some improvements required there. Riprap at culvert outlets to the drain for erosion control. Periodic rock check dam and sediment basins to reduce erosion and improve downstream water quality, and seeding of the disturbed areas and buffer zones to reduce erosion along the banks. The next slide. So as for assessments in general, the Drainage Act requires that the total estimated cost of be assessed against the affected lands and roads under the categories of benefit, outlet liability, injuring liability, special benefit, and special assessment of a public utility or road authority, which is section 26. On this project, there is no assessment for injuring liability. The next slide. Benefit by definition under the act is the advantages to any lands, roads, building, or other structures from the construction, improvement, repair, or maintenance of a drainage work such as result in higher market value or increased crop production or improved appearance or better control of surface water, any advantages relating to the betterment of the lands. Lands located immediately adjacent to the drain that are determined to receive a benefit are assessed for benefit. Benefit assessments for the construction or maintenance are only charged against properties in the section where work is being completed. That means branch 3 or the Biltmore branch, not the remainder of the Simpson Municipal Drain. Next slide, please. Outlet assessment, and this is the one that's more common to most people. Everybody that's within the drainage area who contributes water to the drain is assessed an outlet assessment. And that is the lands and roads that may be accessible for outlet liability are those lands that use the drainage works as an outlet or for which after construction or improvement of the drainage works, an improved outlet is provided. The outlet or improved outlet may be provided either directly or indirectly through any drainage works, overland flow, swale, ravine, creek, or water course, any water that ultimately makes it to the drain. Assessment for outlet is based on the location, area, and rate of flow. Each parcel of land that lies within the drainage basin and is upstream of the location where the construction or maintenance is being undertaken pays a portion of the cost of the construction or maintenance through an outlet assessment. Next slide. Special benefit. Special benefit is any additional work or feature included in the construction, repair, or improvement of drainage works beyond the mandated design standards. Special benefit is governed by Section 24 and 26 of the Drainage Act. This allows for assessment against any lands for which a special benefit has been provided based on actual cost of the special benefit or the increased cost of the drainage work due to the special benefit. In this case, there's this one for the road authority related to the culverts. So road authorities often have a higher design standard for their culverts in order to ensure that that's not impacted by the downstream drainage. There's a special assessment that goes against that for the improvements required and associated with that that's charged to the city. Special assessment is charged where special engineering or design and construction is required to ensure adequate outlet for the downstream property. The next slide. The total cost to complete all works associated with the Simpson Municipal Drain Branch 3 and Biltmore Branch, including engineering, administration, and construction, contingency, mitigation, allowances, and permit fees is estimated to be $359,240.56. The next slide. So this slide breaks down those amounts. In general, the construction for the Simpson Branch 3 is about $114,200. The Biltmore Branch itself, $61,644 for a total of $175,845. There's some contingency amounts associated with that. The engineering and administration associated with the Simpson Branch 3 is estimated at $31,000. For the Biltmore Branch, that's $94,000 for a total of $125,000. And associated with the improvements are a number of allowances. So this is the payment to individual landowners, which the drain passes through for the amount of land that's taken up by the extra width for the construction of the drain, or for the damages to crops, both in the year where construction is completed and in future years after spreading has taken place to ensure proper crop recovery. Those allowances total $26,000 for branch 3, $15,383 for the Biltmore branch, for a total of $41,395. City road authority culverts are not included in this estimate. That means if there's any improvements required to the culverts, that it's anticipated the city takes them on themselves as a standard practice. The city special benefit this is charged for the engineering, for the downstream considerations from culverts and from the road authority, and for the legacy issues. So they pay a fair chunk of the cost of this report and the engineering associated with it and construction. For branch 3, that amount is 137,409. For the Biltmore branch, that is 132,000. There's also a city special benefit for the stormwater management facility, which is included in on the alignment of the drain in the Biltmore subdivision, and that is 21,632 for the special consideration associated with that, leaving the city special benefit to be 291,000 of the 359,000, or a net total assessed to the properties of $68,177.79. The next slide, please. There are a number of factors that go into the calculation of assessment. They include the land use factor, the distance factor, maintenance sections and subsection factor, and the agricultural drainage infrastructure program, all of which are described in the following slides. So the next slide, please. A land use factor is included in the assessment of the calculation to account for the volume of runoff from lands used for different purposes. A numeric value of 1 is given to all agricultural, rural, large lot residential, so greater than 2 hectares, vacant lands, unprotected forests, not subject to a registered managed forest agreement, or any land where an alternative factor is not otherwise specified. So that's kind of the standard use of land in the rural landscape. A value of 2 is given to smaller residential lots, less than 5 acres or 2 hectares. That's on the basis that more water runs off from those lands. They have a house, they have a pool, they have a paved driveway. They're more of a hardened surface than the typical agricultural land, and because of that, more water drains off. A value of 4 is given to land classified as higher density residential. There's none in this case. Institutional, none in this case. Commercial, I don't believe there's any in this case, but the primary one would be road right away. So again, because of the increased amount of hardened surface being the paved roads, more water runs off from that than from an agricultural field. So they pay 4 times as much as the agricultural acre of comparable size. Next slide. Distance factor was developed to account for the proximity of land to the drain and the relative amount of water that will reach the drain. A band is drawn on each side of the drain at approximately 200 meters, a second band at 600 meters, and a third band at approximately 1,000 meters from the drain. A property that it's included in entirely in the first band is given a distance factor of 1. That means they pay the full amount. A property that falls within the second band is given a distance factor of 0.75. That means they pay 75% based on that factor, which is a reduction for the amount of water that will be absorbed, evaporated, otherwise contained, and ultimately not reach the drain. And there's a third factor of 0.5 that for properties that are located at more than 600 meters, and the fourth factor of beyond 1,000 meters is given a factor of 0.3 on the same premise that less water ultimately reaches the drain. The next slide. So this slide shows the distance factors drawn as indicated around the section of the drain. The green ones are on the Simpson Municipal Drain Branch 3, and the yellow ones on the Biltmore branch. Next slide. Maintenance sections and subsection factors. So in order to develop schedules for future maintenance, charges to the Simpson Municipal Drain have been divided into 2 sections. The one being the Simpson Branch 3, and the other one, the Biltmore branch. Each section is further divided into 3 parts. The upstream part is assigned a factor of 1, meaning you use the whole portion of the drain. The middle factor is 0.66, meaning you can only use 2/3 of the drain, so you should only pay for 2/3 of the drain. And the third is a factor of 0.33, which is in the bottom end, meaning you're only using the bottom end of the drain, and your property can only use only the bottom end of the drain, so you should only pay for that portion. Each individual property is assigned a subsection factor corresponding to the location where the drainage from the property enters the drain. All properties upstream of the section where the maintenance is being undertaken are assigned a factor of 1. So that is the people in the Biltmore branch. The Biltmore branch ultimately empties into branch 3 of the drain. Therefore, the people that are using the Biltmore branch are also using all of the branch 3. So they're assigned a factor of 1 but for the branch 3 portion. Next slide, please. So these are the 2 sections, as I said, the Biltmore branch and the branch 3 section. The next slide. There is a Ontario Ministry of Agricultural, Food and Rural Affairs, OMAFRA Agricultural Drainage Infrastructure Program, which offers a 33% grant to properties determined to be agricultural in nature. In general, to be eligible for the grant, the property must be eligible for the farm tax class. A number of properties on this will receive a grant on that basis or are currently eligible. They do have to be eligible at the time of assessment, which is not anticipated to be for a couple of years yet after the Drainage Act process has gone through and the construction process has gone through. So those that are currently eligible are encouraged to maintain their status, and people who believe that they should be eligible can also apply for it and have it in place at the time of assessment and would be offered the 33% grant to reduce their assessment. Next slide. The farm tax class is governed by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, so MPAC. It's typically associated with the reduced taxation from the City of Ottawa. In general, to be eligible for it, you have to be classed as farmland by MPAC. The property needs to be used as part of an ongoing farming operation generating at least $7,000 in annual revenue. It has to hold a valid farm business registration number and be registered with AgriCorp, and has to have more than 50% Canadian ownership. Also, properties that are rented by a farmer can be eligible for this ADIP program as well. So it doesn't have to be directly the person that owns the land doing the farming. Next slide, please. Allowances are paid to the affected lands based on the land lost due to the ditch widening or relocation. So you're not getting paid for the ditch that already exists there and conveys land, but any extra land that we're taking for the little bit of widening or slope flattening, you do get paid for. And also for crop losses, as I said, 100% for the first year. And we also offer 60% for the second year on the basis that where materials from the drain are spread, the land is not going to recover fully in the second year, and a further 40% for the third year. By the fourth year, we do anticipate that the land will fully have recovered after being tilled in and recropped and regenerated. The crop values for these assessments are based on the average typical area crops. So that's corn and soybeans that we generally consider at OMAFRA reported yield. So they have statistics every year that report on the yields of this area. So we use those average yields to generate the amount of crops that would come for that area that we're compensating. And the current prices at the time of the publication of the engineer's report based on AgriCorp reported prices. Next slide. Following this meeting, there will be a quarter revision following the meeting to consider. A landowner assessed for drainage works may appeal to the quarter revision on any of the following grounds, so that any land or road assessment is too high or too low. Any land or road that should have been assessed has not been assessed, and due consideration has not been given to the appropriate land use. Where any landowner is making an appeal to the quarter revision, written notification and supporting documentation must be received by the municipality 10 days prior to the quarter revision. So typically at this meeting to consider, this is your opportunity to accept and move the report through the process. What the quarter revision is a further step in the process that allows the landowners who have specific concerns, almost all of the majority of the concerns are on assessment, so that they can be dealt with at that time. And they don't need to be specifically dealt with at this time. You can just accept the report and move it through the process. The next slide. So for construction and maintenance, future maintenance on the project will be the responsibility of the City of Ottawa. That means they have responsibility in the future for maintaining it. Although individual owners are responsible for periodic inspection of the drain on their own property and reporting maintenance concerns to your drainage superintendent. So in this case, that would be Eldon Hutchings or Dave Ryan. If you have any concerns on the drain after it's constructed, beavers have built dams or there's trees falling into the drain, you mention those concerns to the drainage superintendent and they're addressed. The cost of future maintenance is to be assessed in the same proportion as the scheduled assessment for construction and future maintenance, excluding allowances and special benefit. Therefore, the maintenance costs are to be levied against the lands and upstream from the location of the maintenance being completed, work pro rata on the assessments for benefit and outlet in the report, all of which is in accordance with the Drainage Act. The next slide. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Much appreciated. So we have the presentation in front of us now. We are open for 5 minutes for landowner if they want to speak. I'm not sure if I haven't have anybody registered, but if someone want to speak. Oh, we do? Sorry about that.
Mr. Chair, I understand that 2 individuals registered as delegations at the door, Mr. Mark Foster and Ms. Cheryl Davidson.
So we can start with Mr. Mark Foster. And again, while you're setting up, you have 5 minutes to speak about the technical aspect of the engineer report, and then committee members, they have questions, they will be able to ask you. So.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Mark Foster. My family run Jockbury Farms Limited. We're along the Simpson Drain, purchased the existing Simpson farm. We have 2 main concerns. One is we've invested a fair amount of money into landscaping, as we call it, or GPS shaping of the ground on some of the adjacent parcels to the Simpson Drain. There's a few different reasons for that. One is to slow the water path to the ditch, but yet get the water to the ditch, right? So, I mean, there's a bunch of different agronomic reasons why we do this, but it costs a lot of money. We've done that on adjacent parcels to the Simpson Drain. Throwing the soil back on the edge of the drain would basically eliminate anything that we did. The other problem with that soil in that area is if you do have a sort of an obstruction along the edge of the drain, the type of soil that it is, it will what's the right word I'm looking for? It will erode and end up in the ditch. So we've had really, really good luck with the shaping and slowing down that water path to the ditch. And it's sort of kind of neat to see actually when it's all done, instead of the water going to one area and eroding that area. In a big rain event, we'll actually see that the water will just sort of cascade very slowly over the edge of the field into the ditch. We want to do a good job. We don't want nutrients going into the ditch. We don't want, our consumers, having problems with the fertilizer that we put on the ground and so on, right? This is the premise of why we have done some of the things we've done with that. And we're concerned that we're going to lose that benefit in this scenario. So I guess one question is there any opportunities to move that soil to another location, or I'm open to ideas, I guess.
I think you should finish your presentation.
Okay. So second one is the allowances for crops lost in the construction. One, I'd be interested to understand how those numbers were got to, seeing a more in depth, X times Y equals whatever. And then the other side of it is there an appetite to work with the cropping schedule? And, let's say, okay, we need to get in there, second week of September, and then we could complete construction by fall, or like, is that possible? I don't know. I'm interested to work with you guys to see what we can do there to, to maybe we can work with a schedule that we don't have to leave the ground, vacant for a year. My secondary concern to that is if we leave a chunk of ground vacant, it's just weeds. Like it is. So how do we manage that? I guess thirdly to that end is that we have crops already sold on almost all those acres. So we have binding contracts that we have to fulfill. So it's going to be quite tricky for us to navigate how to do this, sort of without having an open dialogue of how we can achieve our goals and you guys can achieve yours, right? So back to, I should have started with, we have no issues with this work getting done. It probably needs to be done. It doesn't really benefit us per se. Our land is draining just fine. And most of this water is draining through our place as some of our neighbors. But we would just like to try to work with you folks to try to make sure that we aren't behind because of it, right? I think that's the end of my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate the collaboration, and I understand that there is a concern, and I will let Councillor Brown have some question, or you want to go ask the questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good to see you, Mark. Thanks for coming out. I'll ask staff if they could respond to that. So I heard, is there an opportunity to spread the excavated soil to a different location so we don't impact the slope of the field that's been designed? Are we able to work with the landowner and the schedule for when we do this work so we don't impact the work that they're doing? And then the third one was, I guess, to answer Mark's question, when do we anticipate construction? So if some of the crops have been pre-sold, he's got those contracts out, when do we anticipate construction of this work? And is there an opportunity to help the landowners work around that so they don't lose funds, even though some of those, I guess, lost revenues are captured in the engineer's report here?
I'll start through you, Mr. Chair. So there is some flexibility there. We're hoping to do the work later in 2024, pending appeals. But there's typically some flexibility with the contractor to do the work as far as timing goes, some flexibility. And as far as the spoils go, typically it's stated in the engineer's report as to where the spoils are to be spread, but there are also some opportunities just to pile it in certain areas or move it to different parts of the property. I'll let the engineer follow up with that, but yeah, there is some flexibility generally to accommodate the operations. Andy, do you want to?
Yes, the principle in the Drainage Act is you excavate, you spread it. There's specific criteria we put into place for it, and and part of that is, well, I understand what you're saying, but part of that is to make sure there's openings left at along that area where the material is spread. And part of this comes obviously down to cost, because ultimately, in this case, it happens that there's a significant special benefit to the city, but normally it is the property owners who pay. So, you know, finding that balance, but the general practice, there's definitely is provision for the landowner, generally at the landowner's cost, to have, if you don't want the material spread adjacent to the drain, to have it moved. So that, and there, you know, there could be some flexibility within the construction to do as Dave Ryan has said, is to, you know, maybe leave the material in some piles if the landowner wishes to move it. But if there's extra costs associated with it, that generally would be borne by the requesting landowner, to be fair to the other people who are being assessed. A second. Certainly we can go through the detail as Lauren indicated in the presentation, the types of crops that we normally use, or we use, where the estimates are the ones that are normally used in this area, and the price, it comes directly from Agricorp. So that, but if we could certainly sit down with you and Lauren could, and go through how the calculation was done for the crop losses, and also if there's an allowance for land losses. Now, one of the challenges we have with respect to timing is that there are very strict timing restrictions put on by the conservation authorities and by Fisheries and Oceans. So basically from the middle of June till about the end of October is the time when we can do any work where there's any water involved. So there is unfortunately, it's a restriction that we have to deal with, but also impacts landowners. Now, having said that, and I guess the big reason for the crop loss allowance is just the fact that you anticipate when the work is being done is that we'll, you know, let you know ahead of time, and ideally you wouldn't plant crops in that area where it's going to be spread. And then as Lauren pointed out, as we anticipate that, you know, because that material is spread, you're not going to have the same production for the next couple of years. So anyway, we can you know, work with you, but just so you know, there's definitely limitations. I mean, if we could put everything off until after crops are taken off in the fall, that would be ideal. But with the other restrictions that are in place now, it's just not something we can accommodate.
I could just add, Mr. Chair, so within those timing windows, there is a little bit of flexibility though, as to when we issue the commence work order.
All right, thank you very much. So essentially I'm hearing, yes, we can work with the landowners within the regulations set through the Drainage Act and the partnering agencies that we have to work with.
Yeah, you know, we have to bear in mind, we got permits or authorizations from various agencies that have conditions which you have to work with. But ideally, particularly with larger landowners, is yeah, we would like to work with them, but I'm just making sure everybody's clear that there's a lot of restrictions that are now in place, not just for the Drainage Act, but others which we have to deal with through agencies. So
no, I can appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate your presentation, and seems that we'll be able to work with our drainage superintendent and your counselor. I'm sure we'll get to solution, and I understand there is lots of restrictions, so hopefully work through that. Next landowner will be Cheryl Davidson. Thank you for being here this morning. You got 5 minutes, so
Thank you.
time is yours.
I asked to, I actually did go through the hoops and did speak to Mr. Franklin. So I don't know where the ball was dropped on that, but I did go through the hoops. I am a landowner beside the Fosters, actually. I did speak to Lauren. I did ask him what the cost will be for me. I'm not an agriculture. I'm just a homeowner that was severed from the property of a farm. So I'm just trying to live in my home. He said approximately $190 to me as per the Drainage Act in 1952, which I wasn't here for. I don't understand why I'm paying for something. I pay taxes every year, which is quite a bit. I also had the question, you're putting in this drainage if I support farmers. Farmers are able to do their own drainage without permits. So who talks to who here and how does that affect me? Nobody has promises or anything. So currently I have too much water. I asked Mr. Franklin twice, will this affect me in a good way of less water or in a bad way of more water? The first time he didn't have an answer. The second time he said, yes, it should be better for me. I'm still unsure. I am concerned. Yes, I support the farmers on doing the drainage they need to, but if the two drainages don't talk, nobody knows what the next guy's doing. How can you tell me that this is going to be better for me or not? I guess that's about it. I do want to keep up to date on this. Absolutely. I do live on Fallowfield. Like I said, this drainage is not going through my property at all. But I guess I'm supposed to also pay for it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davidson, and we apologize. I understand you did send an email. I like to go to the record to apologize on behalf of our staff, but sometimes things happen, but you're here and you're addressing your concerns, so we thank you for being here. I understand your concern. Today is our meeting to talk about the technical aspect of it, and I will ask Dave, Mr. Ryan, if you have any answer to your questions or to your concern.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only thing I would add is that the property that Ms. Davidson currently lives on is already assessed in the drainage works and has been for a number of years.
It is. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Brown.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ryan, was it assessed in 1969? Is that when it was inside the watershed at that time?
Right.
The property would have been part of the original Simpson drain, which was assessed. I believe that property was subsequently severed from a larger property that was assessed, but overall that property was part of the assessment in 1969.
Thank you. And based on the engineering you've done for the report that's in front of us today, there will be a net benefit inside the watershed, correct? It might not directly impact the landowner sitting next to you today directly, but as a net benefit to the watershed, there should be an improvement in drainage in the area.
As a net benefit to the watershed, yes, to individual properties that are not directly beside the drain. You know, undeterminable, but.
All right, no, thank you. And I'm trying to keep my question scoped to what we're allowed to discuss today, because there will be an opportunity for Cheryl to talk about assessments at the next meeting. So I'm restricted in what I can ask today, just based on the engineering report that's in front of us, but don't run away. You and I can chat after the committee meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, you'll have your opportunity. We will be sending out an email invitation for a court of revision hearing, and then that's where the time we can discuss all those. But this is today specifically on the technical. We're not trying to dismiss your concern, but there will be time and place for them. So we appreciate you coming here, and hopefully our communication next time will be better.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Yeah. So now we go to question to staff before we go to the recommendation, and Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the team that's come today to present. Based on the engineering report, And I forgot what slide it was, Lauren, but it had the breakdown of the finances for this report, 359,000 and change. I'm no math magician, but the way you've engineered this, it appears as though the upfront calculation shows that the city of Ottawa will cover approximately 81% of the costs as they're laid out. So that's quite significant. And then there'll be further reductions for the appropriate landowners that fall through the or fall into the farm tax class. And so the actual cost, that remaining 19% as a watershed, I'm speaking generally, could be covered between the city and the provincial grants that are applied to it. So the actual financial impact based on the engineer's report to the watershed is quite limited. Like I said, upfront cost about 81% is what the city's covering. And then whatever that calculation is per property based on the appropriateness of the assessment is going to be quite limited. It's essentially how I see it. I know that's not a very clear question, but from the report that I've seen in the presentation today, it appears that's pretty well accurate.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that you've summed it up nicely. I had purposely gone in and calculated what the percentage was the city was paying, and 81%, because it's unusual that would be that much, but because of the nature of the area, and as Lauren said, kind of the history of perhaps things weren't dealt with as well as they could have when this was done. But yes, so that, and the other thing is that landowners who are immediately adjacent to the drain, for instance, a farmland would get the 1/3 grant, but they also get the allowances, so that in some cases they're going to get money back, but in other cases it does reduce their assessment. Now for an individual property that's not on the drain, or there's not going to be. But I think the big part is also, it's always a challenge on municipal drains, and I've been doing this for quite a few years, is people visualizing why they're being assessed. But the principle is, water, even if you're a good distance from the drain or you've got a small lot, you do contribute some flow to that drain over time. Sometimes it may not seem that way, but for the sake of argument, snow melt in the spring, that's never always going to be absorbed, so that everybody is assessed a portion. And we developed a process where these distance factors we talk about, as well as land use, to say, okay, if you're quite a distance from the drain, you still contribute water, but it's not going to be at the same rate, and therefore your assessment's not going to be as high as somebody right adjacent to the drain. So
thank you very much for that explanation. And with the chair's latitude, the other thing I just want to, I guess, make clear today is the assessments for the works are not sent out to landowners until after those construction works, which won't be next year. We're still a few years away. And so if there is a financial impact to residents, which I know we can round out in the next meeting, there is time to prepare for those costs. So it's not imminent. Landowners aren't going to expect a bill this fall. Those works are assessed, the cost for the works are assessed after the construction period, and there is a 1-year warranty. So it does bump it out a few years.
Through Mr. That's correct, Councillor. Yes, it'll likely be the latter part of 2025 at the earliest.
Thank you, Chair. That's all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Thank you very much, Andy, Lauren, and Dave, for being here with us this morning. For municipal drain is a very complicated file, and we don't like to deal with it much, but thank you very much for being here. I know it's important, and it's especially for rural land and rural property. No one want to talk municipal drain, but it's actually benefit the landowner and our farmers. So it's basically, it doesn't matter how you look at it. There is benefit always for everyone and sometimes Lauren mentioned something, and it sticks with me, and I totally agree and understand. It doesn't always necessarily benefit your only property, but it benefit the watershed. And those are very hard conversations. So thank you very much for being here with us this afternoon. The recommendation will be, any other question first? Sorry. The recommendation that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend that Council adopt the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultant, Inc., entitled Engineers Report Amendments to the Simpson Municipal Drain Construction of the Baltimore Branch and Modification of Branch Street, and give first and second readings to the bylaw attached as documentary in accordance with section 42 and 45 of the Drainage Act of Ontario. Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And like I said, there is no in-camera item. We do have open mic session, and I think Barry Bruce will be here. Sorry for the delay and taking so much, but we'll it's an open mic section. You can come to the front, and welcome you here to the ERAC this morning, and you got your time to do a presentation and address the committee.
Thank you.
We're gonna give you 5.5 minutes because you waited too long.
Thank you very much. Well, this will be a little bit different topic. It's partly for information and advice and maybe a bit of a challenge, and it's an introduction to some issues that maybe haven't been suggested to this committee. I'm going to tell you about two agri-food organizations that I lead, and more importantly, to suggest and maybe explore with you how ERAC might be involved. First of all, Deep Roots Food Hub is a not-for-profit corporation devoted to food insecurity. Our definition of food insecurity includes individuals who, for various reasons, do not have access to a reliable or nutritious diet, or might not in the future. And because of global climate degradation, that's every one of us. Kelly, can you get the slides up, please? I beg your pardon? We'll start with the first slide. It should be just the front page. That's not it. Okay, that wasn't the one. So I had a PowerPoint presentation. You can hook into my computer if you like. Yeah, it was attached, and it would have gone into a Google Drive. Okay. Yeah. Is that okay?
Let's see if it's the format of the drive.
Okay. Now I gotta find your drive.
We're really trying to keep you longer as much as we can here. I think.
Right, I'm sorry. This is a long meeting as it is, I take it. So
That one?
is that one? Is that your drive?
Doesn't look like it.
Back. Wow, I can't find your drive. Oh, maybe. Okay. No. There we go. See if this works. And we might not even play that video clip because it's 4.5 minutes in itself. So, but if a question comes up, it might be the quickest way to answer it. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably about a 40 megabyte file. Well, maybe we'll just carry on to, there we go.
Mr. Chair, we can certainly circulate both the video clip and the presentation to all the members following the meeting if we're not able to get this. We'll do that either way, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That will be very helpful.
Seems to be stopped at the moment. Oh, there we go.
So we will be circulating the, oh, you got it?
Yeah, just finished.
Yeah. I was thinking you might want to take a bio break or something if this is going to take a few minutes. Okay, there we go. So what's on this slide is the vision statement of Deep Roots Food Hub as it stands. Sustainable local food systems everywhere. And so you can go to the next slide, Kelly. There we go. So our vision being local food systems everywhere. This is a diagram of a food system, and our approach is to promote a technique called regenerative agriculture to restore soil carbon life forms, and all of this embedded in a local food system that's largely self-sufficient. Over the next 2 to 3 years, our intention is to create a functional, small local food system, scale this up, and have it ready for replication. Exerfarm, the other organization, is an NGO. It's grown from a 1/4 acre plot where patients at the West Carleton Medical Center and other volunteers. West Carleton Medical Center is the center that my wife and I started 50 years ago. I'm a family physician. And these volunteers can simultaneously improve their fitness and nutrition through vegetable farming. That's grown into 3 plots devoted to using regenerative farming techniques. And could you go to the next slide, please, Kelly? And that's actually a little video. Hopefully we can play it. Those are my feet. There we go. And this is digging into roughly 1 square foot of very hard clay, actually, to harvest some carrots. And I guess we're not hooked into a speaker, but what I'm saying is, okay, 1 handful, and we get about 2 pounds of carrots. And on the side, this is just from 6 days ago. These carrots were grown regeneratively, meaning there's no tilling, no fertilizer, insecticides, herbicides, irrigation, and it involves about 11 hours of volunteer labor on this 1/4 acre. My co-worker for this particular site is Jane, who's 66 years old with a bad knee. And we weeded with a lawnmower, a scythe, string trimmer. So we actually used weeds as companion crops. And there were some fungal amendments in 2022 using a local Johnson Sioux reactor. Next slide, please. Same, oops, next slide. That's okay. And you're going to see the same thing with beets. And we'll show you hauling this up. Again, one handful, probably about 2 pounds of beets. Next slide. We can't do all of this scaling up and replicating by ourselves. So there's lots of activity out there, but dissipation of effort, I think, is a real danger. However, that could also be strength in numbers. So how does AIRAC and the City of Ottawa fit into all of this? The City of Ottawa Climate Change Master Plan report lists a number of priorities and whether they're started or off track. An obvious priority that's relevant to Deep Roots Food Hub and Exerfarm is number 6, to explore carbon sequestration methods and the role of green infrastructure. And in the 2023 report, it's listed as not started and off track. Slide number 5, please. Maybe that was slide number 5. We are not going to play that because it's too long. Regenerative agriculture is unique, however, in that, according to some experts, through carbon sequestration, atmospheric CO2 levels can be drawn down and brought back to a safe level within 6 years of global adoption. There's an urgency, and I think you probably, hopefully also feel that, to rapidly turn climate change around. Deep Roots Food Hub's vision, sustainable local foods everywhere, and that's everywhere on Earth, encapsulates its plan to accomplish this. So we very much like the opportunity to help with the accomplishment of priority 6 actions, and priority 7 and 8 are also relevant by collaborating with the City of Ottawa and the Climate Change Master Plan. There's really good evidence to support a municipal strategy to speed the development of regenerative agriculture based on its enormous capacity to act as a carbon sink, unique capacity, I should say, embedded in a sustainable local food systems infrastructure. So the question is, could this municipal strategy move forward by a joint pilot project supported by AIRAC and the Climate Change Master Plan? Next slide is a pause for questions, and hopefully I've stayed within roughly my time period.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bruce. We appreciate you being here and for the presentation. I think Councillor Clark Kelly have some question for you, so we'll let him go ahead.
Yes, he's mine, so I'll go first. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Bruce, and obviously waiting 2.5 hours to make a 5-minute presentation shows your dedication to the issue. And obviously you're well informed on some of this as well, having been a doctor for many, many years. I was hoping you could perhaps explain, I understand that growing plants and trees and everything that grows in the ground captures carbon. Is there a greater capture capability with the techniques you're talking about, or lower impact? Can you explain that a little more?
Yes. So generally, the current form of agriculture we're doing now is considered to be not sustainable. If you look around the city, it's 300,000 acres, mostly grow corn and soybeans and grains. And this is an option that I think farmers could well welcome. It's a way to get away from high cost inputs, to explore getting into the mid-range rather than the small range production that we're doing, and to support say that again, Clark. I
Just
think
like
I lost it.
in terms of capturing carbon.
Yeah, capturing carbon.
Is there a difference in how
Yes.
much can be captured
Yeah.
using growing corn and soy or whatever traditional cash croppers grow now versus growing beets
Yeah.
and carrots.
Yeah, so the history of agriculture is that we've tilled for 10,000 years, really, but especially the past 150 years. And we've lost over 75% of the carbon that was embodied underneath the soil in the form of carbon-based life forms like fungi, the mycorrhizal nets, the rhizophagy cycle involving bacteria, protoplasts, earthworms, you name it. All of that's that's how carbon is sequestered in the soil. The capacity of this, and that was the 4.5-minute video that, well, maybe we could still play it because it explains it very well, but it shows that there's the possibility for pulling enough carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to reverse climate, or at least to bring us down into a safe level of atmospheric CO2 within 6 years. Even if that's only partly true, and it was calculated by an organization that I trust called the Soil Food Web, then it's of enormous importance. The other thing is that in capturing this carbon and letting subsoil life forms form, micronutrients are transported and incorporated into the plants that are not normally there and are actually there in decreasing amounts. And I was hoping that, I think you said maybe a health representative would be here, but there is a worldwide reduction in serum magnesium levels that's exactly correlated with our current agri-food system. So most of it's lost because it's never taken up in the first place by plants. Then much of it is lost later on in processing. So what we're promoting is, and medically, we're promoting a plant-rich diet that is high in micronutrients, and this would tremendously help the health status of the population. We tend to eat too much, and we tend to eat the wrong things. So, and think about the 800 million people who are actually starving. It's not a very good diet. So our current system needs transforming.
Okay, I'm just going to shoot one more question, if that's okay with you. I know we've been here for a long time. Local food systems are something that is important to me that I talked about during our campaign. And you and I live in a community that doesn't have a grocery store. We've got a farmer's market on Saturday. We've got a couple farm stands here and there. Yeah. And when I was at the OFA meeting in my ward a couple months ago, I asked farmers about that, and they said they'd love to do it, but there is no local food system or economy to support that.
Right.
How do we support that?
Right. Okay, well, maybe, I wonder if we could have slide 13, maybe, Kelly. Because we're slowly putting the pieces of a local food system together. But what we've done already is to create a root cellar that is capable of holding roughly 70,000 pounds of produce and keeping it safe during the winter. So if we're going to have a local food system, it needs to be active during the winter time. That's one problem with the Canadian food system, is it tends to stop functioning after November and doesn't start functioning again until the following July. I just opened some blueberries from Peru yesterday. And this is, I think, symbolic of our dependence on very long supply chains, which is responsible for about a 50% food waste in first world countries. This is the root cellar that we built with volunteers and also with the help of some city money and a grant from the Trillium organization. So next slide is a volunteer. This is my brother. We started putting these arches together minus in December, minus 14. I recovered from my frostbite in a couple of weeks, but that was the start of it. And then the men and some of the women of the community pitched in, and we had it built within about 10 months. So currently, next slide, we can monitor this through the use of computers. We're off grid completely. We use solar panels. And so, and I can show you data that show that we've kept this produce at a temperature between 2 and 4 degrees centigrade and 90 to 95% humidity throughout the whole winter. So this is an element of the local food system. Another element, of course, is just knowledge. One of our board members is received his PhD in ecology and runs Nature's Apprentice Farm up near Pakenham. Another one is a PhD epidemiologist who is likewise concerned from a health standpoint. And we have another person who's taken a very extensive soil course from the Soil Food Web people. So we understand a lot about this process of using the soil. Where we're weak is probably marketing, a location. Our website is out of date.
Maybe you could, I know people, we're going to probably try to wrap up pretty soon, but can you be specific about how we can be of assistance?
Right. Okay. So, we do have things that we need, and some of them cost money and some of them don't. In general, we need to grow our capacity. We need to recruit more volunteers. We need to increase the number of square feet that are involved and into square miles eventually of regenerative crops. And we need to support farmers who might like to become part of this movement. So ideally, short term, we need enough money just to pay the rent for that root cellar I was showing you. It's about $2,200 a year. Cost of constructing a water tower, just in case we can make use of it. Another $1,000 with volunteer help. Somebody to get our website up and running. Another few hours of strategic planning, and so on. I think we need a little bit of staff, just very part-time. So I'm looking at maybe $15,000. And if there's hope, even a vague hope for a grant, I could make up a budget tomorrow. The other thing is helping to focus maybe the activities of groups who have aims similar to ours, but maybe not quite the same, through more activity together with the Climate Change Master Plan. So I think that's, I think I'm finished.
Not done.
Unless there are more questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bruce, and we appreciate you being here this afternoon with us. Seeing no question, we thank you for taking the time, and we hope we can work with you in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Number 10 on the agenda, notice of motions. I have seeing none. 11, there is no inquiry, and other business. Seeing no other business, I would like to close the meeting by acknowledging that Thanksgiving weekend is coming up. I hope everyone in the room and watching online is able to reflect and spend some time with their families. Meeting is adjourned 12:59. I expect it to be 1, but I'm very close to the minute. So thank you very much, committee member, and hopefully you have a great weekend. Thank you,
Chair.
everyone, and staff, of course.
Happy Agricultural Week, and thank you very much to our turkey farmers.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Take care.